This is a political conversation between two friends. In the shows they discuss political ideas, news and other political subjects. They see their views as centralized and do not class themselves as supporters of any one party. Each have their own views which will be shared in the show. However, please bear in mind that there is times that one of the friends will play devil's advocate and oppose opinions and ideas that he actually supports. We will make a full effort to read and acknowledge every comment on our views, however we'll more often than not respond directly in the comments. We do actively encourage viewers to comment and debate in the comments, but please be aware that any discrimination, hate or threats will not be tolerated. We believe in freedom and democracy, foremost. Unadulterated, unrestricted freedom. This is Libertas. Enjoy the show.
On with the first ever Libertas stream. Well, it's not a stream, it's a recording, but it's a stream. We do eventually intend to make it a stream, but we'll show it because we're not going to stream to nobody, so see how things play out. How are you today, good sir?
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. It's been a long one, but
the great wizard of Wizardas, Libertas. I am Libertas. Wizardas. Right, and so obviously you decided this week we should just look at the weekly news.
Yeah, the week that we've just gone through.
Right, so is there any particular you want to start?
Start at the top and work our way down.
Well, top of my list, the protests.
Which one should we start chronologically with the protests?
Have you got specific ones to talk about? There's been a lot. There's the first one that comes to my brain is the vigil, which obviously weren't a protest at all.
It was, but the vigil got cancelled. That's the thing. It wasn't a vigil because the organisers cancelled it after raising $500,000 to pay fines that they were expecting to get for having the vigil, and they cancelled it because they couldn't get backing from the police to organise it and do it all safely, legally, because they wanted the police there for security and all that, and they didn't want any people there who were going there to get arrested. And obviously they failed to get the organisation sorted. They failed to get it all cleared with the police, which, to be fair, you shouldn't have to clear a protest with the police. Kind of defeats the point of a protest if you've got to ask permission first.
I think that does bring us on to the rest of the weekend,
yeah,
because the weekend's been absolutely insane. We had the Freedom Rally, which really pissed me off. The thing that pissed me off the most about that is I've obviously been trolling, not trolling, but I've obviously been scrolling through Libertas's Twitter account, and the amount of people that have said it's anti-COVID. And it wasn't. The Saturday protest was not at all, by any means, anti-COVID protest. It was a freedom rally. All the information for it was freedom rally. None of the flyers or the posters mentioned COVID. It was just a worldwide freedom rally. Which then the media went, oh, look, it's the BBC, anti-COVID thing. And I suppose you could say it's anti-lockdown and stuff, but it wasn't that. And then we got the Kill the Bill protest, with that on the 21st. This is the 23rd today, by the way, that we're recording. And we're at the 21st, which obviously was, you could interpret that in two ways. There's the bill, which is the crime and order bill, and then there's the bill as in the police. Either way, one of which, we'll get on to that later, because I've got the legislation up for the crime and order bill. But the crime and order bill basically says you're not allowed to protest if the police deem you to be too loud or intimidating. And you go, well, you've literally just said you're allowed to silent protest. In a democracy, you are now allowed to go to protest, but don't let anybody hear you. Well, I'm sorry, but in a democratic state, shouldn't we let people hear us above anything else? That's the entire point, surely.
It's actually stricter than Hong Kong.
It's
which
ridiculous.
Is just bizarre. Well, it's not bizarre. It's something that's been on the cards for a long time. It's something we've been some of us have been, a lot of people have been warning that it's heading that way. With every small step, every small infraction against people's right to free speech and freedom of expression, it's been trending towards that direction. And it's just been, it's not going to be that. It's not going to get that far. And then, of course, it did. We told you so.
But that is it, the entire shit of it. So you got all the violence allegedly from a police individual. Obviously, it will have been both sides. We don't want to point any fingers here, but there were violence between the protesters and the police. Then on the Saturday, you'd got, and I think it's a massive mix of everything that's been happening.
It's a perfect storm.
You've got, I mean, our local police brag quite often on Twitter and Facebook that they get a fine to an 80-year-old couple walking around a park. You know what I mean? 80-year-old couple, for Christ's sake. Well, and I'm not saying that they should be overseen because they're 80 or anything, but you know what I mean? You're going,
the laws,
job's worth.
Yeah, you're reading the law as written rather than the law as it's. There's a phrase or there's a phrase in Dungeons and Dragons which is rules as written or rules as intended, and you can take the literal definition. This is what the words on the paper say, which is how all laws should be. There shouldn't be any room for interpretation. If you've got a law that carries a punishment, you should be able to say yes or no whether something was against that law.
It kind of broke it. It kind of didn't. You know,
like, it's just that there should be no grey areas when it comes to laws as written.
I've always said about laws, to be fair, which is slightly contradicting what you've just said. There should be a reason. With every law, there should be a reason to follow it or an example to follow it.
Yeah, every law should have a backing in morality.
I can always remember when I was young, hearing of we're in the papers and stuff. A kid had been out with his mom and dad for a walk, and a copper had given him a fine for riding his bike on the pavement. Now, this is like a 3-4-year-old kid with stabilizers on the pavement, about half a meter in front of his mom and dad. You know, the law that says you're not supposed to ride your bike on the pavement isn't designed for you to not allow any bikes on the pavement. It's designed to stop idiots riding down the pavement at 20, 30 miles an hour and hitting people. A 3-year-old with stabilizers outside of his mom and dad is not a danger to people, pedestrians on the footpath.
Yeah, with that, it's illegal to cycle on the pavement, full stop, because there have been cases where people have been killed from it. But children under the age of 10 are below the age of criminal responsibility.
True that.
So they can't be prosecuted for a criminal offence. So that will have been laughed out completely out of court. That's another law that needs sorting out as well. With cyclists, I am a newly fledged cyclist. You will never catch me in fucking Lycra. I will die of heat exhaustion in jeans before I wear Lycra. But that's beside the point. Even as a newly fledged cyclist, there needs to be a similar standard to cyclists as other road users. Like, there was a case in Leicester. There's, by the train station, there's a big road that goes down, and there are taxis that were constantly parking right up against it, despite there being a drop-off point inside that they can use, that you don't have to go around a whole one-way system. Taxis just pull up and park, and there's a case where a cyclist got killed with someone opening the door. They just got completely wiped out, knocked into a bus, gone, like dead on scene. And a few months before that, there was a guy on a fixie, which is a fixed gear bicycle. They've got, like, you've got a free wheel. You take your feet off and you get the clack, clack, clack. There's none of that. Yeah. It's like those really cheap kids' bikes you get. You stop pedaling and the pedals keep turning. So if you try to stop your legs moving, it's going to buck you off. This guy was riding one of those, and it's more common in America and cities with less hills, that they'll ride those with no brakes. Because I'll brake with my feet. I'll just stop my legs turning and lock the back wheel up. But if anybody has ever skidded any vehicle, you know how little control you've got over that, which is why ABS is a thing. Anyway, This guy on a bicycle just trammed straight into this woman who was walking down the street and just killed her on a bicycle because he was bucking down this road. Killed her. They had to charge him with a law that was written while Queen Victoria was on the throne because that was the closest thing that they had.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure it was Victoria. I don't think it was George. But yeah.
The interesting thing about the laws being changed, I was looking through the legislation part of the Gov website today, looking for things for this video. And it is interesting how much legislation gets passed through the Lords and the Commons and everything else every day. You don't really hear any of it, to be fair. But there is quite a lot of legislation in regards to police. So the Kill Bill, sorry to swiftly move on.
yeah, we got sidetracked like hell.
It's all good, it's all good. The Kill the Bill protest, but before that was the Saturday one, sorry. On the Saturday, I didn't watch any of the actual protest. I've seen alleged pictures from the protest and it looked quite big. And I've heard a lot of people saying it was big. But then on the evening, there weren't that many people left. And what I started to watch was strange. The people seemingly chased the police away, which I don't imagine for a single second that the police were actually running away, because there were a lot of police and not that many people at that stage. But then you'd got these youths chasing police vans and kicking them and all this stuff. And it was quite a shambles, and you're thinking, what are you doing, you little idiots?
The Metropolitan Police are shambles.
Well, I meant the people chasing the vans, to be fair, but it says me that once chased Nick Legg's car. He deserved it. Then we got that was the end of the Freedom Rally, which well before it ended, because like I said, it was a massive rally by the looks of things. But then on to the 21st, I believe, where we got the Kill the Bill protest. Now, like we said a minute ago, this is, you can interpret it as Kill the Bill as in the crime and order bill, or you can kill the police.
It's definitely supposed to be a double entendre. Yeah. But if we're going to steel man the people rather than setting them up for a straw man argument, it was an unintended side effect. It was a double entendre. There's no way that protesters that have been shouting what they've been shouting about the police, because the guy who killed Sarah Everard was a police officer off duty, not something that happened during his course of work. He was just a shitbag that turned out to be a cop at the same time. It's, I mean, if we're following that logic, why is there so much love for the NHS with saucepans being banged on doorsteps after Harold Shipman?
True. It is quite an interesting thing about that as well, because this is going to take us off onto another tangent, but the I can't remember her name, the very ridiculous statement from her from the Green Party that said all men shouldn't be allowed out after 6 p.m. on a curfew. Now, I am pretty sure that got blown out of context and she didn't mean forever and worldwide. But how much of a ridiculous statement is that? That is wrong on the fact of there'll be less innocent men out to defend the women. You have male police officers, and you can't say, well, male police officers are all right, because it's the thing
Jenny
you're talking
Jones.
about was a police officer, you know? That's the one, Jenny Jones. So that was ridiculous. And that kicked off a mass thing of, which I always, the thing is about sexism and everything else, my view, and I don't really want to go down this road on this video because we've got tons to talk about anyway, but my view is we should go for equality. That's what we've been striving for forever. And then some idiot,
equality, in my humble opinion.
Then some idiot turns around and says we should give men a curfew, and you go, well, that's not going to, that's not what the suffragettes and everyone was shouting for. They were shouting for equal placement, equal rights, equal pay, and that fourth. And I told you to take me on a massive. But all the media coverage was about men and not about the fact that they were a police officer. So we've got all the things that have been coming, all the laws that have been passed saying the things that we can't do. You've got all the things that the police powers that have come through. Did you know in 2020, the police was given the legal right to check your health records, medical
Yep.
records, which I don't understand. We live in a day and age at minute, especially on the internet, of where it's all right for people to see us naked, and I don't mean that as in OnlyFans. I mean, it's all right for everyone to have us data and everything else. Unfortunately, the people that understand that kind of go, well, no, it's not all right. It's not all right that the NSA and GCSHQ are watching us and spying on us. That's not acceptable at any means, purely because it's costing billions of pounds and catching very little. Well, they do know who all the terrorists are. They might know all the terrorists are, and don't get me wrong, they might stop 99% of the terrorist attacks. But at the same point, it always makes me think of the court case in which they asked somebody from the NSA, "You've been monitoring the game, I think it was World of Warcraft." And he says, yeah, I have. This is right. How many terrorists have you caught by doing that? How many terrorist communications? None. So why the fuck are you still doing it? And this is the thing, that they're monitoring everything. And if you listen to what Edward Snowden says, he says that is too much data to analyze efficiently. They should be analyzing certain people, certain groups, and then getting a bit bigger. But what these are doing are making jumps. And the Social Network, the film about what Edward Snowden does, explains that 20, 30 jumps from anybody is everybody. You can't, if you keep making them jumps, you're going to analyze the world.
It's the bacon effect.
And it's also not the security that it seems to be. It also makes us vulnerable. And a good example of that is Julian Assange, God bless his soul, in that high security prison that he shouldn't be in. He warned GCSHQ about the tools they were using to get into people's computers. And you might not realize what tools I'm on about, but you will remember the NHS being hacked a year or two ago, or 3 years ago, and by ransomware.
The WannaCry. The WannaCry ransomware.
And that, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, was designed by GCSHQ. And Julian Assange came straight forward and went, I told you not to use them carelessly. Now you've let them go, and look what's happened. And this is the problem we've got. And everyone says, well, if you're not doing it wrong, well, I'm sorry, no, if you're not doing it wrong, they shouldn't have this information on you. And I think me and you said this in a conversation on phone the other day. If you are doing something wrong, then, and you get caught, then fair enough, keep them under surveillance for the rest of their life. Fair enough. Even if you just stole one chocolate bar, you know what I mean? 50 years, we're going to watch you for just in case. Fair enough. But then watching his entire family, and they're out of family and friends, and then they're out of family and friends.
Part of a chocolate bar trafficking ring.
Why are you surveilling the wizard? Well, his brother's son's friend, sister's friend, mom's friend, friend's son, friend did some years ago.
Stole a Freddo in 1997, and by inflation, that equates to about 16 grand now. So
you've got all this stuff like so. Back to the protest. The police can now access your health records, and there's a list. I did try and find it earlier, but I failed. There's quite a list that the police have been allowed to do over the past year or so that they're not usually allowed to do and stuff. And a lot of the things that you heard on the police bill, in fact, I think on the intro video, there's even a mention of one of the clippings of where people are saying we're becoming a police state. And then you think, well, shit. And then you look at what happened yesterday, and and then you realize why the people are so pissed off and angry about it. And the worst thing is, I was reading through Twitter things. I've got one here for you that I screenshotted. Someone uploaded a picture of a peaceful protest, and then somebody skateboarding over the fire on one of the police vans. And they put, I'm not a protester. I am one of the millions of citizens this bill seeks to protect. The bill being the crime and order bill. It lit a match under the fire in my home city tonight. I'm okay for peaceful disruption. I'm okay with peaceful disruption to my life. That's democracy. But this bill is not in my name. And the problem with it is Priti Patel said it, the police went out tonight to protect everybody, put themselves in between the protesters and you. And I couldn't help but laugh when I read that, because I'm not saying that violence against police is acceptable. It's not. I'm not saying vandalism is acceptable. But the protest was against the police, but yet everybody's made it of we're out to protect you. And like you said earlier, there are a lot of police out there that are good people, do the job properly and stuff. But what we've got is a political kettlefish of the government putting stupid laws in, laws that literally don't make sense. Like, for example, the law to go abroad. As of today, you are legally not allowed to leave the country. How does that stop the virus coming to this country?
It doesn't.
Well, then you can't bring it back. No, it's not illegal to come back. It's illegal to leave. That does not protect us in any shape, way, or form.
That law, does it have a prison sentence?
I think it's a £5,000 fine.
So no prison sentence.
Don't think so.
Then it's not a law to stop it. You can still do it as long as you've got a spare 5k to pay.
You can still do it anyway. But I haven't got my passport on me because I don't carry it around with me. But on your passport,
yeah, there's a section about it gives you right of free passage at any port under Her Majesty the Queen's name.
Yeah, right in the front cover. Make it easy for me to pass and allow me to do so. And international law also says you're not allowed. So the order, and let's move on to the actual bill that I keep mentioning and never actually saying. Because it's interesting how they worded it. Where is it? Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill 2009 to 21. Background. Published Friday the 12th of March 2021. Skip. Let's get to the relevant part. Amends the police powers in the Public Order Act 1986, so police can impose conditions on protests that are noisy enough to cause intimidation or harassment or serious unease, alarm, or distress to bystanders. Now, I believe, Wizard, that you've been on a protest before. In fact, I know you went on the Brexit thing, didn't you?
I went down to London for Brexit Day, where Nigel Farage was stood on a stage, and it was less of a. I went down with the camera because I'm a bit of a hobby photographer, and protests are amazing grounds for photographs. There's so many pictures you can get there. It's just raw emotion all the time. I went down expecting to get loads of good shots. Camera was in the bag. There was nothing. It was a street party outside Parliament. However, all the pubs within, I'd probably say a couple mile radius, every single bar and pub closed, just in case there was any trouble. So I mean, I found a place. It was a hotel lobby, and it cost me 16 quid for a single rum. I was nearly sick because of that price. It was horrendous. But that's the Yorkshireman in me coming out. But yeah, it was every single bar was closed down. But at the end of it all, people were picking up litter before they went home. There was not a single piece of violence. The police didn't have to intervene in anything. The media obviously was there, completely silent on it when there was no trouble, though, especially the BBC, absolutely silent, understated the numbers in the tiny little paragraph blurb that they gave about it. But that was music, stage, lighting, big crowds. That would probably have got caught up under this just because of the noise limits. But before that, I went to the Day for Freedom rally, which was a couple of years ago. That one was, the BBC reported on it as Tommy Robinson's protest, like that Voldemort, he who shall not be named, or Stephen Yaxley Lemon, real name, founder of the whole spiel. He gets a paragraph at the start of every news report. But I went down to that, and I went down because I wanted to see Count Dankula, Mark Meakin, Scottish chap, went through court for several years for making a joke, and got arrested under Section 127 of the Public Order Act. Stupid law, shouldn't exist. Incredibly vague, just like this. Grey areas in law shouldn't happen. I went down to see him, and I was down there, and it was outside Downing Street where they had the stage and the speakers set up. The crowd was huge. It went from Downing Street. I'm not sure how long it's been since you've been in London, but it was from the gates of Downing Street past the Senate, all the way up the main street to Nelson's monument, not Nelson, Trafalgar Square, all the way up, shoulder to shoulder. It was like a music festival. Like the environment, there were families with kids. It was lovely, but there was a drag artist on doing singing Shania Twain, also very loud. This could have got caught up in that. There wasn't a single piece of trouble during the event.
Well, this is what I'm going to say. You've just said both the events were very, very happy and cheerful.
Until it got dark, which is how protests work.
Well, yeah, but then if you look
but
at
that
it,
was the counter protesters that were doing that, though.
If you look at it on a ease of this, if you step back in that moment and think, actually, we're a noisy group that are causing enough noise to be intimidating to somebody. Because especially the Brexit Party, any Remainer could say, "Well, I'm finding that very happy group noise intimidating," because it is, you know what I mean, or serious unease. If you have to walk past a big group like that, it is uneasy. No matter how happy it is, you still feel a bit awkward and a bit, especially if one person's been drinking. You know what I mean?
There were loads of people drinking. Everyone was. It was the environment. It was. There were set areas that the protest organizers had laid out, like because they wanted the police presence there to provide security from counter protesters. They had gone through all the meetings and they'd laid out barriers and marked off areas where people could go, as well as space to let people who were just going about their day-to-day lives do. And there was no trouble during the protest. After the protest, some counter-protesters assaulted a couple of people in nearby pubs for having the gall to go out and protest for free speech and freedom of expression. But in the actual protest, there was no damage, no vandalism, no littering, because people took the rubbish with them. And if anything was left on the floor, it was also taken away by other people. That was the peaceful protest. That is how all peaceful protests should aspire to be. I think the reason that the police were seen to be running away in the latest one, or how they weren't seen to be running away, how they were seen to be heavy-handed, is they were trying to make up for the scenes that we saw in Bristol over the George Floyd riots, how those migrated across the pond, and the statue of is it Colston, the guy's name?
Yeah,
the statue that got tossed into the river.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, the amount of criticism that the police faced in London and in Bristol for the inaction that they did there, because they were just letting people set fire to flags on the cenotaph, graffiti in Winston Churchill's statue, tearing down a statue that was older than anybody who was in attendance there, and tossing it into a river. And they did nothing, and they said, "Oh no," because it was a protest that was obviously going to go violent if the police intervened. It's like, well, surely that's more reason for you to nip it in the bud. If it's going to get violent, if these people are violent people, maybe you should be intervening and stopping them destroying cities.
Yeah, well, you're not going to intervene because they might be stronger than us, so we'll just let them run amok. One of the tweets I made, which I think has had the most likes of anyone that I've put so far. Somebody put, it's a shit. This was on the Freedom Rally, which wasn't. The thing about the Freedom Rally is there was a hell of a lot of people there, and I think from the footage I've seen, the police did keep trying to make sure the presence were felt, and everyone. I've seen footage of them trying to kettle people and then having to back off because there were too many. And somebody commented on a clip saying it's a shame people resort to antagonizing. Sorry, it's a shame that people resort to antagonizing the police. You're always going to get a reaction doing that. It ruins the important message of the point you're trying to protest. And my comment was, it's been a few years since I went to a protest, but from the ones I've been to, it seems the police are very good at instigating it. If the police can aggravate the protesters, they can arrest, and the media can make the people look bad. Hence why the Occupy movement used to sit down. Now, if you haven't heard of the Occupy movement, that's probably because you're too young, because it was only, 6-7 years ago. And it started up with Occupy Wall Street, and the protest was about the 99%, the 1% owning 99% of the world's wealth. So it started on Wall Street, and it passed throughout, and I went to one or two. I went to the Manchester one, I went to the Sheffield one. I think I went to one or two more as well. But I was also at St. Paul's Cathedral not too long after that. In fact, it was Occupy St. Paul's.
Yeah,
That's what they called the
St.
protest.
Paul's, yeah.
So for Occupy Wall Street, all them, I went to Manchester, I went to Sheffield, and I went to St. Paul's. Now, the interesting thing about St. Paul's is we arrived late, and when we got there, everybody had been kettled around. And the police said, no, you can't enter. And the police were telling people, yeah, of course you can come back in if you leave to go to shop. So we found ourselves running around the outside of the police going, no, if you leave, they won't let you back in. Don't matter what it says, they're not letting us in, look. So therefore, you won't be able to go back in either. So they'd stay. And at a certain point, bearing in mind, looking at St. Paul's Cathedral, I'll put a picture up. There is now a ring, like a semicircle of police from either corner of the cathedral. And inside is just a load of people playing happy, chilled out festival music. Everyone's talking to each other. There is alcohol involved, but no one's drunk. And it is a very nice festival of people meeting. And all of a sudden, there were a big shout and a big kerfuffle. There were kerfuffles with the police outside of that circle. And I think we got caught in one or two of them. But that, again, were a bit like kettling the people on the outside and then realising they didn't have enough strength. They didn't have enough solid walls at either side. So it fizzled out and the police went away. And then all of a sudden, I'm pretty sure we were still on the outside of this when it happened. The police came through with riot gear on. So they had the shields and everything. And they ran up the middle of St. Paul's steps, hitting people on the way up. Now, very interesting thing that the Occupy movement did. Every time this happened, because they were used to it by now, they sat down. And everyone went, oh, what were they doing that for? And the reason the Occupy movement did that is because they was wise enough to know that if they responded, even if it had been hit, that would then become a thing. The police would move in and kick everybody out. It had all turned very violent and very nasty. I can also remember going to protests that had a very nice feel. Everybody were happy before, everyone were happy during. I think it was an NHS thing. And the streets being lined with police, very intimidatingly staring at you all the way down. And that's what I meant by that. The police are very good at antagonizing the crowd. If they put very few police on the streets, but shitloads of police at the other side of the buildings where no one saw them, very few protesters turn like that. Because how they generally turn violent, like the student protests, is you have, I'm not going to name any group names, but you have groups of people that purposely wait for that little bit of antagonizing and then make the crowd go for it. Then the crowd turns violent and then it just goes up like a flame to kindling, whatever. And that's what I meant by that. And like I said, I'm not saying that the police are bad. I'm not saying the protesters are good. It is a mix of both. But then, like I messaged you earlier on the mobile phone, I remember, I'm pretty sure it was a Million Mass March, the anonymous protest that we have every year on the 5th of November, where a police van had been set on fire. Now, I was a bit gutted about this because the Million Mass March used to copy what the Occupy movement did. The Anonymous were part of the Occupy movement, and it stemmed from there. And they just kind of went, we're not going to do the violence. We're not going to be naughty. We're going to behave, but we're going to make it known that there's a lot of us in every city around the world. And this one year, the strange thing is about the Million Mass March is every year it was peaceful. But every year, there's more fear-mongering about it. The media pushes it more. Be careful. Stay away from the streets of London tonight. There will be trouble. And you kind of go, why? There weren't any last year. and it builds like that, and then the police put tougher sanctions on it and stuff. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if it was a year ago, 2 years ago, the police had a vehicle set on fire. Now, this was very interesting until the next day when pictures started to circulate from the media, from people there, of this guy setting fire to this police car. Unfortunately, this guy didn't quite fit into the rest of the crowd. He had brand new clothes on. He had brand new jeans on, what looked brand new. He had brand new black and white, I think they were trainers. You know what I mean? They look, you could tell they were brand new. He had this like rainproof jacket on that were brand new. He had a cap on. And then as people started to look at this a bit more, thinking this guy don't quite fit into that crowd, they realized he had what looked like a police button hanging out of his pocket. So at that moment, everyone just kind of went, "No, you bastards, you did that to make us look bad." And then when I look at the stuff last night, apparently I haven't seen it, but one or two people have told me that of the vehicles that were set on fire on Kill the Bill protest, they've seen
It's the Bristol one, isn't it?
Yeah, they had a video of a copper taking a bloke behind a police vehicle or a van or whatever. And then this guy comes back out a few minutes later after having a talk, and then it's that guy that sets the vehicle on fire. So you could say that's something or nothing, but after we'd already proven that the police have done this before. Now, I know that this looks like a massive, what is a nut job, is a conspiracist. Guys, I'm not a conspiracist at all. I do take note of conspiracies because that's how democracy works. You should listen to everything that everyone's got to say. But that is how this works. On a protest like Kill the Bill, the problem is if you let it catch momentum, if you let people get on top of it, all of a sudden you've got this massive thing that's going out around. If you cut that soon as it starts to grow by making it look terrible, making them look like anarchists, not saying that anarchists are bad, but that's what we used to do to anarchists. And every time there were a riot, the media used to go, "Anarchists have been stirring trouble in the streets of London." You know what I mean? I think Conflict, the punk band, had a song that started with that. And that's where it goes. So where do you find that? Do you think that the police always antagonize it? Do you think they do sometimes? Do you think it's never the police?
Depends on the event, and it depends on who is there and what the event is. The one that I went to in the Day for Freedom one, because that was the only one that I've been to where there was trouble, and it was behind the police lines on the counter protesters side
as well. Let me just say as well, I haven't checked this myself, but apparently from people that have checked online, the registration of the police vehicle wasn't MOT'd, which yet again,
no police vehicles. That's nothing. Police vehicles aren't MOT'd. They're
not?
No. The way they work as a fleet vehicle, they don't show up on the MOT or tax database.
Don't get me wrong, I know they're immaculately looked after and they've got very keen mechanics.
That's it's the way the fleet vehicles work. They don't get it. They don't get MOTs. They just get like periodical services or so many miles they've got to go in for checks and stuff. But yeah, with police and instigating, depends on the event. The Day for Freedom one, when I went down, there was an armed guard because it's right next to the MOD building.
To point out as well, he means the Day for Freedom, not the Freedom Rally.
Not the Freedom Rally, the Day for Freedom free speech rally a few years ago. There was an armed officer who was on duty, getting quite good overtime from our conversation, guarding the Ministry of Defence building. I'm sat there and I'm just sort of having a cigarette, chatting with him. He was asking me like, what's actually going on? Because nobody had told him. They're just like, "Oh, there's a protest. We need someone to work overtime." It's like, "Yeah, I'll do the overtime." So I'm stood there. I went suited and booted in the middle of summer for an outdoor stand in the sun event, which is a terrible idea. I think I got heat stroke. But I'm stood there, suit, cigarette, chatting to this bloke who's got an MP5 submachine gun across his chest, a Glock on his hip. And we just stood chatting and shooting the shit, and it was great. And the police that I spoke to, they were, "Oh yeah, it's fine." I had to ask for directions because it had been my first time in London in a couple of years. Gave me directions. They were like, "Oh yeah, there's that thing," and they described it as that Tommy Robinson protest. So like, no, it's a free speech protest, Tommy Robinson is one of the people there. He is not the person there, because there were a number of other people who were there. The British government actually stopped a couple of people flying in from America for that, like turned them away at customs.
Wow. I suppose that is also a factor as well. If the police have been given a briefing that, look, this is a Tommy Robinson rally, there's going to be some ordnance people that want to fight, then they're going to be more apprehensive.
Yeah.
The police for big rallies in London will be from all over the country. I know some up here that go down for stuff like that. And obviously,
that's why you didn't see a massive presence at Extinction Rebellion, because it's a bunch of hippies that were upset about pollution.
Yeah, and you know, when you talk about ways and means to protest, what I liked about Extinction Rebellion is they made people listen. They did obscene things that made people listen, and they actively went for what they were going for. What I really didn't like about Extinction Rebellion is it didn't make any sense. Right?
No.
We want to fight against congestion and climate shit, all this CO2 that your car's kicking out. So we're going to go and stop trains. What the fuck?
Yeah, we're going to go and stop the mass transit that's much better for the environment. Meanwhile, our spokesperson's going to get an Uber to go on Good Morning Britain or GMTV or whichever one it was.
No, don't get me wrong.
The ITV News Morning one.
I know trains aren't the world of good for the environment, but compared to cars, and especially when you look at that sort of travel going forward with renewable energy and stuff, then you go, the trains aren't really the bad ones to be attacking here. It's not like you're attacking steam trains here. You know what I mean? You're not attacking a coal plant or anything. You're attacking passengers that have chosen not to use a vehicle. And you can't say, well, we should walk. Well, how do you know how far they're going?
Yeah, go glue yourself to an Uber. But yeah, the with that, it depends on the event. The student protests in Sheffield was where they were the highest, because that was Nick Clegg's constituency. After Nick Clegg sold the student vote up the Swanee just so he could lick David Cameron's boots, the protests kicked off there massively, and the police there were brilliant. Like I was on the protesters' side. I think you remember how I used to be when I was of that age. So I was a little, I bandana, shoulder length hair, big old loony lefty liberal type.
And now you're a wizard.
And now I'm a wizard.
Harry.
I've ascended. I've ascended. But yeah, I went there. The police there were fantastic. Like they were trying to they were asking questions that didn't fit in normal conversation. Oh, so where have you come from? Like, sorry, what's your name? Oh, it's gave my name. It's like, it's your name, like expectant pause for the surname. It's like, I'm not giving you that, mate. You don't. This is a polite conversation in passing. I'm not giving you my full name.
My name's Jim.
Yeah.
This is my address. I work at, here's my national insurance number.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. Like I said, police have to go to these things.
Yeah, they've got a job to do. And I did look, if you're going to stereotype based on appearances, I looked like I was one of the people that was likely to cause trouble. I had my army surplus combat jacket on, torn up jeans, big boots, and
did you know police aren't allowed to strike either?
They aren't, no, which is why in America, when it happens, it's the blue flu, where they all just call in sick at the same time, which is also illegal, and you can do time for it. But yeah, it is a thankless job. I wouldn't do it. I couldn't do it because I disagree with all of the laws. Not all of them. I disagree with a large portion of the laws that I would then have to enforce in the job. But yeah, with regards to like the tipping over, the burning of police vans, during I think it was the same student protests. It was it was during the Cameron Clegg Tory Lib Dem coalition. The kettling in London, they kettled a bunch of protesters who had gone out for an afternoon, early evening finish in whatever time of year it was, because it was so long ago, I can't remember. But I think we were actually watching the footage on we were bouncing news channels at yours after we'd been to the pub, and we were bouncing through the news channels, and we saw the BBC footage, which was BBC footage. We saw the Sky footage, which wasn't much better. And then we flipped over to Russia Today, and it was just raw camera footage. And you saw the bloke being dragged out the wheelchair. The BBC footage showed a bunch of protesters looking angry, holding signs, but that was cropped out, so it looked like they were just holding big poles and bars surrounding a group of police, and they were just instead of attacking the police like you'd expect to be the follow-on from the footage that you were shown, they just chanted at the cops, "Who's kettled now? Who's kettled now? Shame on you! Shame on you!" And that was in response to that kettling situation where there were a group of people who were not dressed for an overnight stay in the cold in London when the weather was not the best. They were dressed like jeans, thin hoodie, t-shirt, trainers. They had maybe a bottle of water on some of them, and they just locked them in there. So all they had was other protesters, signs, banners, flags. And so obviously they started small campfires to keep warm when it got to like midnight, and they were still not being allowed to leave after they'd been bounced from one exit to another. Oh, you can leave through this street. Oh, you can leave via this street. Just doing laps of this entire area they were kettled in. So they started burning their protest signs to stay warm. And for hours that they were there was a police van kettled in with them. Police vans aren't cheap. They're expensive. The lighting on them alone is several £1,000s just for the lights.
And they have tactical strategies to get into places to get people. Like, for example, if they find out there's an officer on floor in there, they will very quickly formulate.
There was no officer there. So whichever copper had driven that van in, had parked it, locked it, not put the alarm on, left.
Yeah, I can remember seeing it, yeah.
And obviously, as it approached, I think it must have been about 1 o'clock in the morning at that point, they were getting annoyed at not being let out, and they tipped the thing over. But then, which they shouldn't have done. They took the bait, which was clearly what it was. They took the bait, and that was broadcast on every single news media site in the UK because the protests were not popular with the general public. Or they weren't supposed to be popular with the general public.
And they never are. They never are. No matter how much publicity a group does to get their protest out, or how big it is.
Yeah.
If the media do not show it, the vast majority of people will not know it's even occurred, never mind going to the fact that it ever did. Unless you live in London and work in London, and then you get fed up of seeing them.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, I was telling you during the whole Sarah Everard vigil turned protest, I was fascinated to see what spin the media would put on it, thinking, would they go for breaking COVID rules? Would they go for police brutality? Would they go for silence because we can't decide? And they went for the police brutality route, which was surprising. I think that COVID restrictions should have zero bearing whatsoever on protest.
Well, no, because this is the point we're at, and this is why the protests are getting so bad. This is why the hate for the police are getting so bad, is because it's the police. Don't get me wrong, there are some arsehole police officers, but like we've discussed, the vast majority aren't. In fact, I can remember the episode where I chased Nick Clegg's car. I can remember talking to two officers there, and one were quite happy to talk. And he explained, look, I agree with you, but I'm not allowed to physically be there and agree with you because I'm not allowed. And the other one,
they've got to remain politically impartial.
I don't know. I'm showing you, folks. You can't see me, but he had his arms crossed, looking down, and you're grunting, and you're going. That's the thing, and it's same in the security industry. I used to do security, and I knew so many people, and you can look at the security officers that want a fight, but the vast majority of police are just there and do get into it because they want to do good for the community. They want to help people, blah, blah, blah. So it's not fair that they get attacked. But at the same point, when it comes to the Sarah Everard stuff, when it comes to the police getting more powers, you get that. And then we're moving into So we're getting, I can't remember what track we're on, but we're getting towards this point where the police are getting more powers. The lockdowns are getting more frequent. We're coming out at the minute of a lockdown with the reason we're only, by the way, the only reason we've got a roadmap out of that is because the government's running out of money. They can't keep putting us into debt because we're going to double the World War II debt at this rate. So they can't keep us locked down for that reason. You've got backbenchers that are saying, right, we're going to out Boris Johnson if he doesn't actually get a proper plan out of this. So then they go, right, we're going to get out. And then they go, oh, look, there's a third wave. But then when we got this vaccine, we told, right, after this vaccine's sorted, we'll vaccinate all the vulnerable people and then we'll go down the age groups. As soon as all the vulnerable people have been vaccinated, we can start to ease lockdown. Now, there was someone on talk radio the other week that had been on before, and he made that promise. And the presenter said, well, it's happened. Why aren't we coming out of it? And he batted around it and she went, no, you lied. You told us that we'd be coming out of it after all the vulnerable had been vaccinated. Now you're telling us all the vulnerable are vaccinated, but we have to stay in it. Now there's another wave coming. Everyone's going, oh, shit, cases are going to go up. And I'm quite frankly sat here going, I don't like give a shit if cases go up. You told us that with the virus, it will still spread. Vaccine, the virus will still spread. But there'll be far less hospitalizations and far less deaths. Now, I'm sorry, but if that's true, then there's no reason to care about another wave coming because there won't be any deaths and there won't be any hospitalizations. So therefore, we can move out of it. And then you go, well, actually, shit, we're now not allowed to protest, so we can't go and fucking stand on the street and do what we're told. Go make us point out. Then you go, well, you can. You have to ask police, and then you have to go and stand there very quietly, not in anybody's way, making your sign. You know, you may as well just go and stand at the end of your road with a plaque. It's not.
That's the thing. The law is that vague that if somebody, it's similar to Section 127 of the Public Order Act. The criminal, the thing that decides whether it's criminal or not with Section 127 is whether you cause offence, which is so subjective that my free speech being curtailed for the sake of somebody else's feelings is deeply offensive to me. And similarly, with the new police act, with the new bill that they're trying to kill, the wording in that is if it can cause distress or disturbance to very subjective things. Because I wouldn't get distressed at protesters shouting. I wouldn't get distressed at protesters banging drums. An 80-year-old pensioner who's walking home, it's before solstice, so it's getting dark early, and she's walking home and all she can hear coming from around the corner is screaming and shouting from a protest. That would be distressing for that little old lady. Subjective stuff should not have any place in law. Objective facts should be the basis of all law.
To put that into realistic terms, because I imagine there's people watching thinking, well, do you know that? Yeah, it's not really going to happen like that, though. There were two big reform acts that were protested for. One was feel free to offend me. And Rowan Atkinson got involved in this one and backed it. And it was basically because Section 5 of the Public Order Act said that you're not allowed to offend
127. 127. Section 5 is being loud and swearing. Section 127 is the...
I'm sure... I'll find it and I'll put it in text.
We'll double check, yeah. No, Section 127 is the Communications Act. That's doing it over Twitter.
But I'm sure Section 5 Public Order Act of the Public... So like I say, it's Section 5 of the Public Order Act. And that was because you'd got, I think it was a 12-year-old boy got prosecuted and fined for saying woof to a sausage dog, and the owner found it offensive. That is a real life story that actually went through the courts and came out with the boy, well, obviously his parents that ended up being fined, but still. Then there was the kid that got prosecuted for holding up the Scientology as a cult sign, and these were all because of the word offense. You're going to get prosecuted, but you can't get prosecuted because these people, including Rowan Atkinson, stood up for our free speech and said the word offense is not in there because it is far too subjective. And then after that one, they went after the word annoy because in the same law, it said you weren't allowed to annoy anybody. And again, I'm pretty sure that this video is annoying a lot of people, and I shouldn't have to go to prison for that because that's what democracy is for.
Let's say if we're going to start locking people up for annoying, let's get some. We'll have to get some handcuffs and pay a trip to Parliament because
yeah. And Katie Price, she's annoyed me with what she said about my freedom speech this week.
Oh, with the social media license. Oh, indeed, mate, you got a license for that Facebook account.
Shall we? We'll move on to that in a sec. Do you think that the protests and the anti-police wave that we're having is going to get worse or better?
Worse.
I think it's going to get worse. Something that I've heard for the past probably 2 years is when's the revolution starting? Now that packs a big punch if you think about what it means, and I don't think the people that say it mean it like that. But it is thing that people say. And then more and more so from March 2020, people have been talking about civil war. We've been talking about revolution. And this is all on the fine of this is not how we're supposed to live. And I don't think anybody in the world thinks the first lockdown was unjustified. I don't think anybody in the world thinks, fuck it, let people die.
No, because at that point, we didn't know anything about it apart from what footage was being smuggled out of China by people who were then black bagged and disappeared. Nobody's heard anything about Lawyer Chen. Nothing at all about, is it Chen Qishi? I'm terrible with Chinese pronunciations, but I think it's Chen Qishi. He got black bagged last year. Nobody's heard from him early last year. Nobody's heard anything. His family don't know where he is. He's in a detention center, probably put onto one of the trains with all the Uyghurs and sent off to camps in a jumpsuit with a shaved head.
Yeah.
But yeah, with
that, you could have a complete debate about that, because what's happening with Hong Kong / China at the minute is appalling, and we're making more trade deals with them. You know, this shit that goes on, and then you've got the Great Reset. That is, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, the Great Reset. If you don't know what it is, it's the
Klaus Schwab,
Phil Charles of the Royals,
Klaus Schwab,
with all the left going, yeah, well, what we're going to do is make a socialist dictatorship. That's all. We're all going to get paid same for doing not much. But if you think the royal family are going to abide by that, if you think the leaders of his country are going to abide by that, it's worrying. And you know, somebody posted something the other day, I think it was on Facebook, of it was a caricature type thing, and it was someone looking at a Nazi history book. Well, not Nazi history, but a history book about Nazism and the World War II. And it said in a speech bubble, how did they ever let this happen? And then you look around, and like we just said, all these people that there's a lot of people saying, well, you shouldn't let these protests happen because of the coronavirus. But the problem is, as we've seen over the last 12 months, it keeps evolving. And every time we do something, there is a clause. What if there's new variants? Well, I'm sorry, we have a new variant of flu every year and we get new vaccines for it.
Which is why the flu vaccine is very rarely effective. I've had the flu vaccine several times because I'm classed as a vulnerable person because I have got a long-term respiratory illness. I've also had the coronavirus, despite following all the lockdown restrictions, social distancing, washing hands, down to working from home, furlough, the whole 9 yards. Obeyed every step of the way. Still got it. And main reason for that is because we've not limited human interaction. We have funneled it into two places: hospitals, where ill people who have got comorbidities are already, and supermarkets, where everybody has to go in order to eat and get food. So all we've done is concentrated where people are socializing. So we're not stopping the spread, we're just localizing it.
I think I might have sent it to you. There was some research that came out last month that said, because people watching, you'll probably remember in the summer of 2020, there was pictures everywhere saying of the beaches, and I think it was while we was out of lockdown. Well, because we were out for most of the summer. But it was saying that these super mega spreaders, oh, how dare they go to the beach and
Super
sit so.
spreader event that didn't do anything.
And then the media turned around the other month and said, actually, scientists have now said not a single proven transmission, not one transmission has been proven to come from a beach at all, ever. So then, yet again, you look at the protests and you go, why? And you know, I looked, well, I didn't look, I can remember reading an article about BLM and why that hadn't caused transmission. And that was because, yet again, another thing they reckon hasn't got a transmission rate, not one that's identifiable. And they reckon that's because it's outdoors. And you go in, well, so why? And a lot of them did have masks on, to be fair. I wouldn't say the majority.
You've got to wear
but
a
lot of
mask
them
if you're going to set fire to a city. Yeah.
But
yeah, that's the thing. It's wearing masks will be one factor because as much as people want to say it doesn't work, all you've got to do is look at China and look at Hong Kong and any city in the UK that has got a large Asian student population. A lot of them wear masks during cold and flu seasons. It's not to protect themselves, it's to protect other people if they get ill. You see Chinese in Hong Kong, I think Taiwan and Korea, their public transport systems, almost everybody is wearing a mask, young, old. Masks work, and that's just proven because it's stopping people from, it's catching a portion of the droplets.
Hong Kong have done it since the influenza,
since the last SARS outbreak.
Because I know about this song because I said, well, I hadn't done recent research. I just knew it from back of my head from researching it before years ago, and that was because I lived in a city where there were a lot of West people coming in and they were wearing masks, and I was a bit offended. So I googled it and I learned why. See, that's what you're supposed to do, by the way. This is how we stop racism and other discrimination. You educate yourself, and then all that racism and discrimination goes away. And you'll find at that point that people in Hong Kong, the wizards just showed me a mask on the video. the people in Hong Kong do that out of politeness. In the UK, we don't do that. We go. So I used to work in a pub, and somebody once came into the pub and went, "Oh, I'll have a black currant." I said, "Are you not drinking?" "No, I'm absolutely full of cold." And then he had half of his black currant. 15 minutes later, went home because he was that ill. But yet, he'd still come to a pub that had a band on that was rammed. And you're going, "Yeah, cracking, well done." And then we mock these people in the West because they wear a mask, and then it's because of the pollution. I think you'll find Hong Kong's pollution levels not that high at all, by the way.
And also cloth face coverings, surgical masks, which are the most common, don't offer you any protection against the type of pollution that you're talking about. They offer minimal particulate protection, minimal, like less than a dust mask, and they offer you zero chemical protection. For something like that, you would need an activated charcoal filter.
There needs to be a lot of education about masks as well.
There needed to be a lot of education around a number of things at the very start of this. For example, if in February, January time, when all of this was happening, because it was after January, because that was Brexit Day, January 31st, I was in London, and a load of the people who I was hanging out with in London, we were talking about the coronavirus back then because we were switched on. We were talking about that. We were in politically activated circles where we were talking about global events, and we were talking about it, and that there were a lot of jokes being made, and we were all aware of it, and we're like, yeah, people are dying in China, man. Right. And we were like, we really should close the borders down until we figure out what's going on, because so far all we've got is videos of dead bodies lined up in Chinese hospitals. But
we didn't. We went into lockdown and still left the borders open.
Yes, yeah. So you're not allowed to go.
Incredible.
which was another thing that it was incredibly racist and incredibly harmful. And anybody who shared it was a bigot and should be cast out from the general public and polite society. Pubs closed, borders open, which was not so much a criticism on immigration, it was a criticism on the government's handling of the coronavirus pandemic. But with this, just to get back to my point before I get sidetracked again, because I'm good at that, the biggest problem that we had at the beginning of this was no education. People didn't know what masks did what masks were good. People didn't know whether or not masks were effective because we had conflicting information from the World Health Organization, from the British government, and from SAGE. And nobody taught the British public about how supply chain works. Biggest problem that Britain faced was supply chain issues. Not because we didn't have stock of anything, because we did. As a country, we have plenty of food, we have plenty of medicine, we have plenty of masks, we have plenty of toilet paper, we had soap and hand sanitizer galore, but it's all sitting in warehouses because why would a supermarket waste valuable money building a larger stock room than they need if they just get, the West in general operates on a just-in-time delivery system where the supermarkets know how much they sell of a particular item over a particular course of time, depending on the season, the time of year, and the month. They know they're going to sell more booze around Christmas. They know they're going to sell more booze around New Year's. They're going to sell more chocolate around Easter. They even down to the point where when are the most people's birthdays? We're going to sell more chocolate then. We're going to sell more cakes and booze then. Summer, the amount of crates of alcohol that you see being delivered to shops and supermarkets over summer, because it's when everybody's going boozing, everybody's going out and having garden parties and stuff. Nobody explained to the uninformed masses of the British public how the supply chain works. And in effect, people were seeing the fighting over stuff in Australia and how that was leading to shortages in toilet paper in Australia. Nobody was telling them why all the panic buying was leading to shortages and why the only thing causing the shortages was the panic buying. What should have happened is Boris or an advisor and somebody important from a major company such as Tesco, Asda, or the parent company Walmart, Sainsbury's, Marks and Sparks, any and all of them should have just gone on and done a round of morning news and radio shows. Could have Skyped into, you could have just done a pre-recorded message like, hello, idiots. This is how supply chain works. This is how we get stuff to you.
This is a public service announcement.
Yeah. We have got enough. If you just continue as if nothing was happening, you will not notice a shortage. If you act like an absolute dingus and just wait until the last minute and then go out and try and buy everything, you're going to run out. And I'm not a prepper, despite me showing you an actual serviceable gas mask on camera now. I bought that for a meme at the start of the coronavirus pandemic when nobody could get a dust mask. I bought myself an actual gas mask for half the price that someone was selling a packet of cloth masks just for a joke. And now it sits on a shelf as a reminder that it was funny. But yeah, it's just stupidity, and not stupidity, naivety, and the lack of preparedness. The amount of households that have got no future proofing. Like, how many days' food does the average family have in their house?
Yeah,
2 or 3 days. How much bottled water does the average British household have? None, because we've got really good resources when it comes to water. How much medicine do people have for their existing health concerns? Not enough. And it's just like, have a cupboard with some tins in it. Have a bag of rice. Have a bag of dry pasta. Add the rest of it. While everyone else was panicking, I buy my rice in 10 kilogram sacks just because I'm cheap.
Rice boy.
Yeah. But while everybody else was out there like rushing to get
you Gandalf the rice.
it is white rice. But no, while everyone's panic buying the tins of soup and long shelf life stuff and flour for some reason, because everyone was a baker all of a sudden, I was just going to the oops aisle and like, I'm just going to have some fresh salmon that's got 6 hours left on its best before date before it grows legs and walks away.
I do, though, blame the supermarkets. I have blamed them from the very start of the panic buying, and I blame them now.
Yeah.
They were,
Why would they tell anyone? They were making bank.
there were 2-3 weeks before they started limiting stock per customer before they started doing it. And I said to many people, they're doing that on purpose. End of the day, if the media goes, oh, everyone's panic buying, and then you go in and there's no beer, you're going to panic buy too. And it has a domino effect, which causes havoc, but makes fortunes for them. Do you know, I know people that work in all sorts of industries, and every single one that made consumable products, like bread, doubled their production. Doubled. In the space of a week, they fucking doubled production. And you're saying it's not, oh, they didn't antagonize that. Bollocks. They loved it. And I said to a woman at checkout, I had a big smile on my face because we didn't have to wear masks then. I had a big smile on my face.
I was wearing a mask. I was wearing a mask to the shop in January.
I wore a mask in 1994.
No, February. It was February before it all kicked off in March.
Yeah, but that doesn't include robbing it.
All right, you got no. It was just it was a shemagh. It was just a big scarf. I just pulled it up over my nose. It's just in case I'd come into contact with anyone while I was in London, for example, using mass transport in a large compressed environment. 'Cause we didn't know anything about it then. We didn't know whether it was airborne, like truly airborne, not suspended in particles, which is what it is, and those particles can travel through the air. We didn't know if it was airborne. We didn't know if it was, we didn't know anything. And that's why the measures that were taken early on didn't quite go far enough. Now we know what it is, and we know how bad it is, or not, as the case may be. As I said, I've got a long-term respiratory issue, and I had COVID. I was sharing a bed with somebody who had COVID for 2 weeks before I showed symptoms. I got over it in a week.
I'll bang the best data sources from the official ONS, Office of National Statistics, I can for this. But the last time I checked, and I'll bang them in the description, so check anything we reference. I'll try and put as many sources in the description as possible. Obviously, that won't be possible for everything. But when I last checked, which were middle towards the end of last year, so October, November, there was a top cause of biggest underlying condition. Now, for a lot of last year, a lot of people thought, "Oh, I've got this, I've got that, I'm vulnerable." The biggest underlying death condition of COVID, when I looked, I'm not saying now because obviously I haven't looked today, but then it was Alzheimer's dementia, which is year after year the number one biggest killer. And then the second biggest underlying health condition was heart disease, which is the second biggest killer every year. So also that makes me wonder how many of the deaths are actually attributed. Because don't forget, we only get mentioned. I think we both know people that we both personally know people that have died of COVID without even having a test or a cough or anything. You know what I mean? So it does put that on it. And then when you look at the data, when you look at the world's got a free 2.9 yesterday. The mortality rate across the world for COVID-19 yesterday was 3.9%. Now, I haven't looked at today's, but I guarantee it's at least 4% in the UK, or at least 3.5%. And then
that's died with, not died of, though. That's an important distinction to make. Is it's not necessarily proven that was the cause of death, or even a contributing factor. That is, these people had COVID or a positive COVID test at the time of death. which is skewing the results. And that is something that I believe it was Sage admitted to, that the results were deaths with, not of.
Did you know when they first started doing that, they was using 3 months? They're using a data set of died within 3 months of having a positive test. And they only stopped doing that because Oxford University went, what the fuck are you doing? You can't do that.
Yeah, I mean,
And then we changed it.
I'm several months clear. I've had the only lasting effect that I've had is my sense of smell. I can still smell things, but it's changed my perception of smell. Sweet tastes, but sweet smells particularly. I can't smell sweet. I've got here a bottle of very nice mango rum.
I can't smell sweet. I smell foul.
It just smells like ethanol, and this has got a really strong smell to it normally, but I can't smell sweet. I can smell other smells behind the sweet or that contribute to it, but I can't smell sweetness. That's it. I'm not using my inhalers any more than I would previously. I'm not getting out of breath. I'm doing more cardio than before I had it, but that's just because I'm fat and I'm going to need to be cycling to work for commuting.
Fat wizard.
Yeah, I'm a fat wizard.
Hashtag fat wizard.
Yeah. I'm not fat. I'm thick with 2 C's.
Hashtag thick fat wizard.
But yeah, it's long-term effects. 3 months. I didn't start having the smell effects until a month ago. And it's been about 6 months since I had it. So unless I've had it again and my body's built up an immunity to it where I've not noticed any other symptoms, I guess I'll never know because I didn't have a test because I had no symptoms afterwards. But yeah.
I do just want to say as well, before we move on, I suppose we should check his list because it's been over an hour. Wow. How time flies. It is, as we're recording this, it is 1 year since the lockdown started. Well, since it was announced. So I do want to say
1 year since 12 weeks to turn the tide. America had 14 days to stop the spread. The UK obviously had a much more conservative estimate of 12 weeks to turn the tide. It's 52, but close. There's a 2 in there.
I do want to say on both our behalves, but we are very deeply saddened by every death. There is, I mean, yesterday there were 17 people died of COVID, and is it 1,000 people die every day? 2,000 people die every day? Between 1,000 and 2,000 people die every day. And we're saddened by every death. Whatever we said, we don't downplay anybody that does die of COVID. Obviously, it's undeniable. A graph that I like to plot and look at is the deaths every day compared to the 5-year average. Deaths every week compared to the 5-year average of that week. And when you look at that, there is undoubtedly 2 massive spikes above the average, and they can't be attributed to anything else other than COVID. So people do die of the virus, and we are deeply saddened that people do die by it. We are in no way by any means saying the virus doesn't exist. Wizard said that he wears a mask and he takes it very seriously.
Yeah, because it's not for me, for people who are vulnerable, which is where the focus should be. And as you were saying, any and every loss of life is something that shouldn't be taken lightly. It's something that is always sad, whether it was dying peacefully of old age, or whether it's dying of an illness, or whether it's being killed in a car crash. Every loss of life is tragic.
But I think that is important to say about the every life thing, because a big problem we have is everyone says, it's become apparent to me over the last 12 months that if you say anything, now I've done a lot over this last 12 months. I've done, I don't really want to reveal my identity, so I've done strenuous things, very, very strenuous things to raise money for NHS. I've signed up for NHS responders. I have done a lot to factor in for that. But
we were both 3D printing face shields for the NHS.
Yeah, for free out of his own money. So we have done a lot, but throughout the entire thing, I've been getting data off the ONS and publishing it onto social media platforms. And because what I publish isn't the same as what the government are telling you, People have come back to me saying, you're dangerous. If I ever see you, I'll do this to you. And it's come a part of, if you say something that the government has said the opposite to, then you're a conspiracist, you're a liar. But
if you go against the state's dogma.
The thing that really pissed me off about that is every time I share something, I put the source. And the only free sources I use, sorry, is not two. I use the NHS's website, the official NHS website, the official Gov website, which has got a coronavirus.gov dashboard, and the ONS
Office of
website.
National Statistics.
So I use the three main sources that the news are telling you of. I'm using them too. But because I put deaths in comparison to the 5-year average, for example, they go, oh, you're trying to make it out, it's not as bad. No, what I'm doing is explain to people exactly how it is. I'm not patronizing, I'm not condescending. I'm going, this is how it is. This is the data. But then people think that's a threat and you're trying to make things bad. There's something that's really, really pissed me off because I'm a business owner and I think it's selfless of me to allow my business to close. And you can say, oh, you're getting money off government. Yeah, I'm getting naff all. That's looking after my business. It's not looking after me and my family. Yeah, but you got your own money. Yeah, and that's still going to my business to keep that up and running for when this all opens. We're on far less money than I were before, even though I'm getting 80% of my profits, blah, blah, blah. And then, because bearing in mind, it's not 80% of takings, it's 80% of profits. Big, big difference. Especially when 60%, 70% of your turnovers rent and stuff like that.
Inventory.
So my profit, in theory, you can take £1,000, only have £400 profit. So then from that £400, I've got through everything that I would with that £1,000. And the government at the beginning of the year gives you a nice little handsome sum. And you're kind of like, well, yeah, that's not really going to do it either. But where are I going with that? So, but then all of a sudden you get people say, well, if you want to go back and open your business, you're selfish. Now, I'm sorry, but the same could be argued in the opposite way around.
If you're
200,000 restaurants have
stay
shut.
home and continue to get it, because it's not free money, it's your money that you are getting
all
from
back, sunshine.
Yeah, it's going to be collected at some point. The company I used to work for, because I have since had to find new employment, non-COVID related, non-Brexit related. If any commenters were worrying, I've had to find new employment during the COVID lockdown. I was lucky enough to have found it. I've worked, we were furloughed initially when every single business was closed down. As soon as we were allowed, we went back with remote working, and I'm currently remote working now. I wanted to get back to work as soon as possible because I know that my taxes are going to go up next year. And anyone who complains about that doesn't know how economics works. They don't know what money is. Money is the value that you place on it. It only has the value that is placed upon it. If you give everybody £3,000 in a stimulus check that I saw a lot of people online begging for, demanding of the government, is stimulus checks like they had in America. America didn't have the furlough scheme. They only had the stimulus checks, which was $600, which the average wage in America numerically is higher than it is in the UK. 600 is about half of an average month's wage for somebody working a 40-hour week in the UK. $600 in America is barely a week. The cost of living over there is much higher. It wasn't enough. But they didn't have furlough. They didn't have any of these schemes. We've had furlough, and it was fantastic, but it's overused. The amount of businesses that could and should be reopened at the moment would be contributing drastically to the bill that we are going to have to pay, and our children are going to have to repay, and probably their children are going to have to repay. This is probably going to be being paid off over generations, multiple generations. Because the cost is
creating austerity again.
Yeah, because
austerity just means paying back what you've already took.
Yeah, it's a choice between austerity or hyperinflation. It's like, take your pick. Neither of them are good. You've got a choice between, I'm getting taxed out the wazoo, there are massive public service cuts, or it's costing me 2 weeks' wages to buy food for 2 days. It's either way, it's going to be bad, and we've got a long road to recovery. The only upside that we have with this is that the entire world is being affected as well, which means everybody, every single nation is having the same problem. So there aren't going to be major differences between, for example, the UK and the European Union, which is a massive saving grace for the European Union, because whereas the UK now has the UK to support, the European Union, as well as having the financial behemoth of Germany to support it, also has every other country in between. They've got Poland, they've got Ukraine, they've got, do they have Ukraine? No, Ukraine isn't in the EU. They've got Poland, they've got France, they've got Spain, they've got Italy, they've got all the border countries that they also have to support.
It's just as well that it's going to collapse soon, isn't it?
Well, that's it. There have been whispers of Frexit and Swexit, and
they have been for a while. I know someone that
they have
a Europe tour. Do you know when I was at the Saint Paul Cathedral Occupy, which I was talking about earlier? I was talking to a French girl, and she's a French woman, and she said, "Do you not realize the rest of the world still follows what the UK do?" No, what? She went, yeah. She says, it's not so much of they do it, we do it, but the world still very keenly watches the UK. And I think both of us said soon as Brexit were voted through. In fact, before it even voted through, I think before the referendum, we both said, as soon as we come out, it's going to have a domino effect. And it is doing. I know somebody that went on a farewell European tour and came back and said the anti-EU candidates were gaining extreme popularity throughout all the 3 or 4 countries they've been in. And it is going through. All bless Nigel Farage. Now, regardless what you think of Nigel Farage, that boy fought for a long, hard time to show everyone what EU were. And before anyone comes across and says I'm racist because I don't support the EU, my main and only reason of being against the EU, and I'm pretty sure you'll agree, Wizard, is the freedom to make the laws and everything else, but mainly the fact that the EU wants its own army. Who do you think you are, by the way?
That was a conspiracy theory a couple of years ago.
But do you know everything that's happening is a fucking conspiracy theory a couple of years ago?
That's it. I mean, Alec, say what you want about the man. He's a lunatic. Alex Jones.
Yeah.
Alex Jones, man. If you cut through the layer of just showmanship, because quite frankly, a lot of it is showmanship. It's a character. Yeah. It's a persona that he's built. If you cut through the majority of that, he has been right a lot of the time. There was, he went on a massive rant about billionaires being Satanist cult members and a load of other things. I'm going to leave the details very vague because I'm not sure what route we're going to be taking with regards to monetization or how family friendly we're going to try and keep things. But he was basically talking about Epstein and his island. And 7 years ago, this was like, oh, it's conspiracy theories. The elite aren't going onto islands and doing all of these horrific things. Like, what do you mean that's a picture of Bill Clinton on a private jet with one of the victims? What? Please, I don't want to slip and fall and hang myself in a prison. COVID death. But yeah, it's one of those things. Every single conspiracy theory has got some basis in fact. Otherwise, it wouldn't be convincing, apart from flat Earth. But that's just 50% meme, 50% moron.
Well, this is what I was saying earlier about I listen to everything, no matter how ludicrous your opinion is on something, how ludicrous your theory is on something. I'm gonna listen, and them that don't, I'm sorry, but you have no place in democracy. If I said to you, if I said to you, no, a good point, right, of of this and talking about what was a conspiracy is now reality, or proven reality, is phone tracking. I can remember telling people that, they're watching, and people, granddads used to talk about it. You know what I mean? They're watching everything you say and do. And everyone, conspiracy. Now, if you went around telling people how stupid they were for saying that, and then Edward Snowden came forward with documents proving that they was doing this,
A lot
then
of
you look
people
like a
double
right
down.
idiot.
A
And
lot of people double down.
the point being is you should listen, and that's how democracy works. The problem is with our society is with democracy that doesn't like to listen. And I dare I say it, the left wing are the worst for this. The Corbynites out there are the ones that have their opinion. They're right, you're wrong. I'm not even going to listen to you. You're offensive when you tell me I'm wrong. They're the people, and the problem is with racism, with sexism, with
Isms have become pointless terms at the moment with how overused they are.
well, yeah, but with everything, the problem is we don't listen. If like the Hong Kong thing, if you actually sit back and listen to what people have got to say, why they're doing it, rather than just going, "Oh, they're insulting our atmosphere because they're wearing masks, they think we're dirty." Well, actually, why don't you listen? Why don't you go and ask and listen to why they're doing it? And then you might learn something, and then you might walk away thinking, "How very noble is that person to wear a mask just to make sure I don't get." They're doing something to make sure they don't inconvenience me. Cracking. And that's the problem. And that's where racism comes from too, of people not understanding. People used to be racist because people used to think that different colors meant different creatures and stuff. And then when you actually sit down and talk and educate, and it's same with Islam, if you sit and talk to people, don't get me wrong, there is same as Christianity and Catholicism and whatever other shit religion you want to talk about. I'm not a religious person. I think we're all shit.
Basically, all of the Abrahamic religions, they all come from the same source material.
Yeah, they all have different ranks. That you've got Catholics that don't drink, you've got Catholics that do drink, you've got Catholics that pray often, you've got Catholics that aren't, and you're not. You can't say that. Oh well, that person's not a Catholic because they're not as devout as me. You're not God. You can't decide that. And it's the same with Islam. Some people pray 99 times a day. Some people pray once a week. Some people pray once a year. Regardless, but until you start talking to Muslims about that, you're not going to understand it, and you're going to believe whatever the media tell you, whatever Tommy Robinson tells you, or whatever a preacher tells you. You have to get that information from everybody, and education is the way we break through. So when it comes to conspiracies, we should be the same. We should listen to it, and we should take note of it, because, like I say, it shouldn't be left up to someone like Edward Snowden to tell us all this, and go, oh shit. And in regards to conspiracy, I can remember watching videos when I can remember watching videos over 13 years ago that tell me things that were going to happen. And everyone, it was the New World Order Illuminati stuff. And everyone went, oh, no, that's bollocks. No, that's not going to happen. But every single thing it said were going to happen has happened, even down to RFID chips in his passport. The only thing that hasn't happened, which I guarantee will happen in the next 10 years, I guess they're 15 years, but they'll bring it to 10, is RFID chips in his skin. Because it's coming.
I want one.
Oh, you bastard!
I want my own open source one. I don't want. I'll clarify that. I want my own programmable one in my hand, so I don't have to remember a bloody key, one of those little key fobs to get into the office.
No, I'm so against you right now, wizard.
Right,
you're a wizard. You should be able to do it magically anyway.
Okay, cool. Right, we'll have a quick tangent on this. I'm quite happy to talk about this. The range is like a meter. The data that they can store is negligible. And if it's open source and I put it in myself, who cares? Like and it's programmable by me. I want one. It's cool.
My problem with this is
it's not connected to the internet. Nobody can get access to it. And if I'm that fed up with it, I'll cut it out.
All right, if there were a law tomorrow saying you had to carry an ID chip with you,
go fuck yourself.
Exactly. Well, this is my problem. This is where this
is the thing. Being forced to do something, being mandated to do something. You mentioned that the reason that you voted to leave the EU was because of the control over the laws. Mine, partly, yeah. My biggest reason was how much your vote counts. The further away from the seat of power you are, the less your voice counts. I'm my perfect world, my utopia is capitalist because it works. It's
I
not.
thought you were going to say me sat at the side of a president.
Oh no!
No,
If I was put in a position of political power, the United Nations would get involved. I would be effective, but the United Nations would get involved.
no, it doesn't matter when it comes to this country. The UN do not matter at the slightest. Do you know how many countries we've invaded because the UN have said, well, they're doing something?
Not the UN. America would probably come and get involved because they'd find a reason.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look, because you've got there's a bloke. What's his name? It's something like Julian fucking Assange.
Yep.
The UN about 3 times have said you need to let that man go. In fact, going back before prison, while they were in the embassy, you need to let that man leave, and they still didn't. Now that's another thing that really fucks me off about the government. Right, the UN said it. We have moral on our side. Let's go. Oh, the UN said it. Well, fuck them because we're UK.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah. But as I say, my perfect political system for the UK, because we're a small enough country, we can do it easily. Less power in Westminster. Scotland, you're going to love it. It's going to be fantastic. Westminster going to have next to nothing to do with it. They are going to have control over big stuff. Intercontinental, intercountry problems. That's what the government's there for. Big laws, murder, stuff like that. Everything else, local government, local council. Why should Westminster dictate how much money your local council is going to spend to fix your roads? Why should Westminster have any say whatsoever on where the taxes go for this specific area? Your local council, on the other hand, the ones that you can directly speak to, the ones that you can see out and about, they are more likely to be held accountable, more likely for you to have an impact when you speak to them and when you vote them in. Because in local elections, as we saw in the last general election, the amazing things that a small amount of people can do when they are persuaded to do so, which we saw areas in Yorkshire, areas where, like, without going too far into detail, my old constituency has been red forever. They swung blue last time just to get Brexit sorted because it's ridiculous. It was taking too long. It was backtracking. It was backpedaling. And funnily enough, we've got a section on this, how the EU has started to show their true colours in the bright of daylight.
Well, no, continued to.
Continue.
They haven't just. This happened. This has been going on.
Oh no, it's more blatant. They've been more blatant.
I mean, the more blatant bit has been going on ever since the EU went. Britain, I know we said that you couldn't cope without us, but you seem to have a far vaster supply of vaccines than we do. You need to supply us. In fact, we didn't say that to us. They said to AstraZeneca, and AstraZeneca went.
Yeah.
No, you know that the UK was the first to have trust in us, so therefore UK can have it first. And then EU's gone this massive pissy fit. And well, we're going to do this. Fuck you. We're going to bully you because that's what we fucking do because we're a dictator.
Over a deal that was made before any of these trade restrictions and trade negotiations were a thing. They are post-dating their own trade rules. They are breaching international law in doing so. And it's just showing that, one, they can't organize for piss because they are too far removed from each of the small local municipalities that they're in charge of. And there's so much fucking bloat. The amount of champagne and caviar that they're eating on taxpayer money, while they're not doing anything about natural disasters, they're not doing anything about poverty and joblessness, they're not buying vaccines when the vaccines are made available, and they're saying that they're not going to be as effective when the UK is buying them. And then the UK bought them all up, and now the EU is holding them hostage.
If anyone watching hasn't watched the last 2 Nigel Farage speeches,
I haven't.
Dude, you've got to get on to YouTube. I'm going to send them you to make sure you watch them. They are the most empowering, brilliant speeches ever.
Can you send me a transcript? Big Brexit fan. Not a big fan of Nigel Farage. He annoys me. It's
Do you know, I like him, but I think I like him purely because he's the stick up their backside. And that's
Yeah,
what he's done. And he's just retired, Annie. He's just said, I'm not coming out of
yeah,
politics, but this party politics isn't for me. He said something like, donated. I've dedicated 30 years, I've the best years of my life to help you guys get off this track. And I am going to carry on working for you and doing this stuff, but I can't carry on like this. And he does, and he scares them for everything. He started the reform. No, it weren't. It was the Brexit party when Theresa May were fucking it all up, which that were a mistake to start with. David Cameron went, right, I'm a Remainer, so I'm going to step back and let the Brexiteers sort this out. And then Theresa May came in, and she was a Remainer as well. And you went,
yeah,
that was pointless, weren't it? So
yeah,
have Cameron back.
yeah. They should have put Boris in from the beginning.
They did.
Uh,
They
They,
should have.
they should have put Boris in from the beginning. Theresa May should have read the room and not had the snap general election because that nearly. I voted for Corbyn in that one.
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah. Me, Mr. Capitalism is the best thing since sliced bread because communists can only eat bread. I voted for Corbyn
Let me
in
shove this pitchfork up your arse.
no, because Theresa May. I was like, no, because Jeremy Corbyn, all of the Labour lovies, Jeremy Corbyn for his entire career has been a Eurosceptic. His entire career. He just didn't like that it came around under a Tory government without him in the seat of power.
I'd rather have
Because
Piers Corbyn.
oh man, Piers Corbyn. That would. I quite like the. Do you remember do you know about how America used to do their elections?
No.
Like now it's the party system, similar to us. They've got the multiple tiers of parliament like we've got of Congress and the Senate and the House. The way that it used to be is you would vote for the one person you wanted to be the president.
Yeah.
The president would be the person with the most votes. The vice president would be the person with the second most votes. They could have two drastically conflicting ideas, but they would also be representing the two largest groups of people in the country. Those two people with massively conflicting views then have to compromise with themselves, which in turn will cause a compromise between the rest of the country, which will reduce the amount of division that you see. It's another brilliant political idea. It's a brilliant experiment. It would probably lead to, political assassinations being more prevalent, but the entertainment value would be low.
Communism, Marxism, and socialism were great experiments, but let's not go there again.
Yeah, let's not. What's the death toll?
I like the thing about socialism. Every socialist thinks they've got something new, and you go, "Yeah, that's communism," and they go, "No, it's not," and you go, well, "It is." Google it; you'll find it is.
Yeah, it's. I mean, even if it's a combination of things. There's the murders that the governments did. I think the last estimate was around about 70 million died under communist regimes from execution, labor camps, famine, ethnic cleansing, and desperate flight from countries in leaky boats, which is still going on today from nations such as Cuba to the United States, which is why, when given the choice between more socialist policies from the Democrats to Donald Trump, the majority of Cuban immigrants voted for Donald Trump because they've seen socialism in action.
But this is where the Great Reset's going to take us. There's no other way that can go apart from communism. Like I explained earlier, in a country that's run like ours, no monarchy and no powers above are going to come down to that. So therefore, you'll have a dictatorship.
Yep. It's that the monarchy should have zero power.
The problem with...
They should exist because they're figureheads. Who else are we going to put on the money?
Look at me, I exist.
Sorry, can you imagine if we, like the Americans have got the famous presidents, could you imagine who would we put on our money? The only prime ministers that anybody can remember is Winston Churchill, who is apparently, a racist according to the graffiti on his statue.
No, whoa. I don't mean whoop for
Yeah. So we'd have Churchill, and who's the only other British Prime Minister that most people can remember?
John Major.
John Major. That's two.
I was taking piss, but okay.
No,
I can
he's a
remember quite a
memorable
lot,
one.
to be fair.
The average person.
Theodore Roosevelt. I'm
America.
joking, guys. I'm joking.
Maggie.
Yeah, there's MAGA.
Can you
Tony
imagine?
Blair. Tony Blair's apparently still massively
Tony Blair's a
influential.
fucking war criminal.
He is, and I agree, but he's apparently massively influential still. And
Yeah.
I don't understand why. The best
Can I
thing
ask
about Tony Blair,
why are we still asking for this man's opinion on every single news channel about current political events? We've just got his face coming on with his massive ears, looking like he's Gary Lineker's illegitimate father.
he's
coming on.
perfect for spitting image, isn't he?
He is. He is a walking caricature. But we've got this war criminal coming on to national television criticizing the current government. It's like, I'm sorry, have they not committed enough acts of war yet?
I like how he became a peace envoy. That was brilliant.
Yeah, mate, it's almost as bad an idea as giving a fucking BBC presenter a job at a children's hospital.
Oh, hashtag ban the BBC. Oh,
Yeah, defund the BBC. Yeah.
Oh, dear God. Only thing I miss about BBC is Doctor Who.
Yeah, they killed that as well.
So to finish off that conversation we're having about 6 hours ago about the coronavirus.
Yeah.
A massive point of conversation at the minute is vaccine passports or health passports.
You can buy them already on the darknet.
Yeah, I've got 7. You never know when you're going to need one. Joking.
It's got 8.
No, I lost one. I've got 6. The problem. Oh dear. The problem with the way I see the vaccines passports is the group kind of a good idea for international travel. If on a short-term basis, if you're going abroad, I can understand the problems with that. But my entire problem with nationally is it is factual, and the Prime Minister and his little scrawnies and the media have constantly told everyone the vaccines do not stop transmission. So, as someone in my young age, I'm below 50, I am healthy, I have no health conditions, I have got no disabilities. Why on earth should I have it? And when you ask people that, their only response is, well, stop other people getting it. No, I can still catch it. All it
and
does,
you can still transmit it,
is it tells my body what the virus is. So when the virus
and
comes,
how to fight it, so you don't get ill.
So when the virus comes, my body can fight against it.
Yeah.
So the mask is to protect other people. The vaccine is to protect yourself. So I don't understand why I should have it. And on seeing that is quite contradictory what I've said about international travel, of the benefit of if you're bringing it back and everyone that's even 1% vulnerable has had it, then fair enough. But what do you think on the vaccine passport situation?
Foreign travel, completely understand it. If it was stopping you from transmitting it, but it's not. It should be the vaccine passport shouldn't be a thing. It's there's a German phrase that I learned when I heard about them. It's Papier bitte. Papers, please. It's a very, very commonly used German phrase over the last, not so much in the last 20 years, but 30, 40 years ago, it had been a very, very commonly used German phrase for about another 30, 40 years. You had to have papers in all of the authoritarian regimes that spanned over there. From Weimar Germany, they implemented them during the start of World War II, and then half of Germany kept them before the unification, before the wall came down. You had to have papers for no other reason, so they know who you are. We don't have to carry identification by law in the UK. Americans, a lot of you do. I think it varies from state to state. There are some states where you have to have ID. Unless you're operating a motor vehicle, in which case you have to have your driver's license. leaving the country or flying domestically, or trying to purchase something that is age restricted, such as alcohol or tobacco, or to gamble. But that's just so you can prove that you're old enough, prove that you are who you say you are when you are traveling on airlines and ferries internationally, so they can tell who's moving country to country. Vaccines should not have any bearing on that. Unless it's for insurance purposes. If you want travel insurance or healthcare insurance while you're traveling abroad, I understand it for that, because the insurers need to know how much of a risk is this person going to have of dying abroad, and we've got to pay to ship them back over, which is not cheap. It's the same thing if you were going to go on a holiday to the Congo. If you're going to go on a wildlife photography trip to a rainforest, you go and you get your malaria shots. You go and get vaccinated for dengue fever and yellow fever and all of these things that we just do not get in the West, because they're a real risk over there, and you have to have them for insurance purposes. You don't have to have them by law. You can go over with no vaccines. You can get bitten by a mosquito, die of malaria in a third world country.
Interesting you mentioned insurance, because I found out this week, apparently someone's phoned an insurance company and said, what happens with this COVID vaccine and my insurance? And apparently, I don't know if it's all, but most insurances, life insurances, are no longer valid if you've had the vaccine, because believe it or not, as everyone keeps telling me, it's not still on trial, it is still being on trial. There are still trials coming out about it, and because there has to be short and long tests. You can't just go out there and go tested it for a couple of months, there you go to the world. So because it's still on test, apparently, if you've got health insurance, life insurance, phone up and double check just in case. But that's what I've heard. And something else that really pisses me off about the news on regards to the vaccines is they keep telling you these bizarre numbers, but I have no idea where they're picking them up from. But in the UK, for every medicine, every vaccine we have the yellow card system, which is designed for when you start using paracetamol. If someone has an allergic reaction to it or something, then we need to know about it, so we can look at the statistics and go, shit, 500,000 people died from paracetamol this year. We need to change something about that. We need to regulate them in some kind of way. So this yellow card system has obviously been set up for the vaccines, and I will put a link in the down below in the description about this.
In the doobly-doo.
In the doobly-doo. It's the yellow card system, and in the link it'll give you is the actual report. But if you scroll near the bottom, there's 3 links. One for the Pfizer, one for the AstraZeneca, and one for unspecified. So it's one of the 2, but we don't know. And between them both, it's over 500 deaths after having either of the vaccines. Now, this is reported by people. It's a government thing. It's government run. It's a government body. But it's reported by people. So obviously, because there's stuff on there like blindness. There's a hell of a lot of different conditions people have had, and there's blindness, there's deafness, there's all sorts.
There's also to take into effect of that, just as a heads up, the majority, is this UK based only?
I do believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So in the UK, the people who have been getting the vaccinations at the moment have been vulnerable people primarily. So the elderly, the infirm, the people with long-lasting health conditions who are more likely to have died after taking it, whether the vaccine had any effect on that or not, there's no real way of knowing unless a more in-depth study is done on it. I personally don't think the vaccine is bad. I haven't had it yet. I haven't been offered it yet because I'm young and in good health, apart from my long-lasting respiratory issue, which is not a cause for getting the vaccine, apparently.
Just for adding on to the disclaimer as well, the mortality rate after the second vaccine, so after the second jab, the amount of people that have died in comparison to how many people had it, it is a lot less than the COVID deaths in percentages. It's something like 0.02%. But my entire point of coming on to them deaths that have been reported, because obviously there'll be a lot that haven't been reported, because there's a lot of people that don't know what the yellow card system is if you make it mandatory, one, you're making people have something that could be dangerous to them, because the under a bit of a stutter going on. The underlining point of that is it is a surgical procedure. It's a medical procedure, not surgical. It's medical procedure, and you're forcing that upon somebody. No medical procedure is 100% safe. It's just not possible.
No, I had to sign paperwork when I broke my wrist surfing. I had to sign paperwork before I went in to have it bolted back together.
Hashtag surfing wizard.
Hashtag fat surfing wizard. I had to sign paperwork before I went in for my operation saying, oh, heads up, the potential downsides of this is you could die. It's like, gee whiz, thanks.
That's what I mean. So if you make it mandatory, you are making people have something that could potentially harm them, even though the chances are very small.
I didn't die, by the way.
He did, and then he was respawned as a wizard. You're a wizard, Harry.
It was the fentanyl that brought me back from the brink, man. Sure. Heads up, fentanyl is what they use to knock you out. It is brutal. I've got no idea how anyone could do that. How anyone could do that recreationally.
So as I'm pretty sure you're all aware by now, I am against mandatory vaccines as well. As far as I'm aware, we should vaccinate anybody that wants to be vaccinated up to the age of 18, and then leave everyone below 18 alone. Because the mortality rate, by the way, for people under the 18, if you get COVID, your chance of survival is 99.999999 fucking 9. So vaccinating them when they can still spread it if they've had vaccination is pointless. Let it be done on a voluntary basis all the way down. And then if it stops people from dying and stuff, then next year we can go at it again like the flu jab and just go, right, we want the old people to come and get it. And maybe even then the young people. But what I'm saying is it definitely shouldn't be mandatory. And we definitely shouldn't be pushing it on young people. Well, yeah, but that's the entire point. Libertas means freedom in Latin. And it is that dictatorship of you can have it. So then when it comes onto the vaccine passport, you're still making it mandatory. You're still saying, look, all right, you don't have to have a vaccine, but you're not fucking leaving your house ever again. You know what I mean? That's not freedom.
It's governing by proxy, which is a big thing that I've got a gripe with, which is also why we should have really short-term limits for people in politics. Because if you're only in politics for 4 years, a company is not going to spend thousands and millions of pounds on your political career if you're not going to be in there long enough to do anything for them. Because what we tend to see happen is governing by proxy. The government can't pass a law to say, oh yeah, you have to have this medical procedure by law. It would never fly. It would never pass. There would be enough opposition to it. But what they can do is they can go, oh, hi, is that the airplane company? Is that, yeah? Oh, great. You've really suffered through this coronavirus pandemic, haven't you? Yeah. You need bailing out, don't you? Yeah. We want lots of people to get vaccinated, but we can't force them to. Can you just not let anybody use your service unless they're vaccinated and just make it a business decision? Yeah, we can do that. You're going to bail us out, though, because we're going to lose a lot of money for this because lots of people are just going to not be happy about it. We'll bail you out.
Every airline that suggested doing that sort of thing in the past couple of months, the share price has dropped phenomenally low, which just does show the feel of that. Not the overall feel. Obviously, how the stock market works is you try to anticipate other people's reactions. So if traders think that's going to be going to, let me reiterate, if traders think that's going to be bad for their business, they'll sell out the shares and push the price down. So it doesn't necessarily mean that people won't do it. It's just that traders think that they won't. But the traders are generally right about that sort of stuff.
Yeah, you don't gamble with that much money without a success rate.
Exactly.
But it's one of those things. It's if you give the average person a choice, like, right, you can go through this medical procedure, you can follow these rules and go through this extra step, and you can fly British Airways first class. But you've got to have this thing that we're not sure on yet, that is still being rolled out, and you've got to carry papers with you. Or I checked, I can make this joke because they ceased operations about 4 years ago. Or would you rather fly Monarch Airlines and get coughed on, but not have to go through any of those extra steps? They might lick your face as you're boarding, but you don't have to carry a passport with you, a COVID passport. A lot of people are going to go, yeah, I'll get coughed on by Monarch Airlines.
The last question then, well, it's kind of double barrel. The first one, it kind of follows on from that. The nurses are being told that the vaccine is mandatory for them. Do you think that's an acceptable exception, or is no exception acceptable?
That's a private company mandating that their staff take specific measures to make sure that they're not.
I know people in university training to be a doctor that have been told that in informal ways that if they're not having a vaccine, they're off the course because they have to go around hospitals and such, so they should be vaccinated.
With that, private companies should be free to do whatever they want. Government bodies and publicly funded bodies should have to obey a stricter set of standards.
By the way, as a business owner, I don't own I don't own staff. I don't have staff, but I did receive an email from my local council today informing me I should make all my staff get vaccinated. I didn't read it because I ain't got any staff, so I discarded it. I don't think it used the word make. I think it just kind of said get your staff vaccinated or check that they are being vaccinated. But still,
it's from a business standpoint. With what the vaccine does do, it makes sense to want your employees vaccinated, because anytime your staff are off sick, you are paying them sick pay, unless you're a.
And with a vaccine, in theory, they'll be sick for less long and less severe, and you also look after their benefits as well.
Yeah, and also you then don't have to pay death in service fees and stuff like that, which is quite expensive. But yeah, so private companies do whatever you want. If you're taxpayer funded, you are working for the people. If you're taxpayer funded, you shouldn't be dictating what your staff have to do in order to work. The NHS is already facing a massive staffing problem. There are not enough people joining the NHS as staff.
Who would want to join NHS right now? That's like, we're going to war. Oh, I'll join Army now. No, I think I'll join.
There's a lot of people that are, and there's a lot of people that are inspired to join the military when there is an actual immediate imminent need for it. Which is one thing that I think it's typically more of a British thing, is going out of your way in order to make yourself useful. It's like the wartime spirit. Everybody pitch in, everybody do your bit, which should be voluntary.
I do think that the entire thing has been managed badly in regards to the NHS. Not faulting the NHS, faulting the powers above. Two reasons make me say that. One is the COVID hospitals. There were news articles that stated there weren't enough staff for the hospitals. Not true. There weren't enough staff that was trained to deal with COVID for the hospitals and the hospitals we've got now. So they could have been reallocated. I'm pretty sure, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm pretty sure I remember that China didn't open overflow hospitals. They opened COVID hospitals. Obviously, I weren't there, so I definitely don't know. But
yeah, they built those massive COVID-specific buildings in an insanely short amount of time, while also telling the rest of the world that it wasn't anything to worry about at a time where nobody knew anything. Yeah, it's nothing to worry about. We've just knocked up 6 hospitals in 2 weeks.
That is what you were saying earlier about the sorry, cough. But that is what you were saying earlier about the protecting the people in the hospital. Because what we've done is filled those hospitals with COVID and then wonder why so many as old and vulnerable are dying. It's because you've put loads of COVID patients right outside them in the same hospital.
At least we didn't do it with nursing homes like Governor Cuomo did in New York.
Yeah. And the second one is staff. The NHS throughout the last year has had a lot of staff not doing all. And that sounds really bad. And I know people watching it, if there's anybody watching, to be fair. I know there's a lot of people watching now going, oh, you bastards, our staff are very busy. And that's not what I mean. And if you think every single NHS staff member is busy, you are wrong. Because I'll have you know, dentists have been shut for the last year. And they are dental. I can see Wizard shaking his head at me.
I've been trying to get a dentist appointment for over a year.
Fair enough. I thought you were telling me I was wrong.
No.
They have been doing emergency appointments.
That's a private dentist as well, not NHS. That's a private dentist. I've been trying to give them money for a year. They're like, oh, you've got an issue. Yeah, we can give you this temporary thing which will cause you more problems and overprescribe you antibiotics.
Yeah, they're not allowed to open, which is, I would say, which is strange because it's a medical procedure, but a lot of the other hospital wards are being shut, which is what I'm getting at. And what we could have
Cancer
done
wards
is, even if we just move the ICU to the pop-up hospitals,
A&E,
we could have the system. The problem is with any system, regardless whether you're in a business or anything else, it's efficiency. And we spent billions literally on the Nightingale hospitals
that never got used.
And frankly, that's a disgrace to the Nightingale name. God bless her soul. I bet she's turning in the grave, because we've wasted staff, we've wasted space, we've wasted equipment, and I know we're low on equipment. But the point being is, it should have all been sorted better. And I'm not saying I could have done a better job, and I'm not saying, oh, defund the NHS or anything like that. I have just specifically said I'm not slagging off the NHS. It's the powers above. Anyone, whoever it were that said, right, we'll create these pop hospitals, should have arranged that. And then anyone that is going mad at that, you want to go and find all them people that aren't been treated for cancer and everything else in that time. Because what this has done is just create a shitstorm. It does seem to be like the government's panicked. And an example of the government panicking is the November announcement that was supposed to be at 4:00, 6:00, and then it finally came on at 8:00. That's not a government making a decision that they're happy with. That's a government going, shit, right, what we're doing. You know what I mean? And yeah, I know things get delayed, but come on, that...
It did start off as a very dynamic situation, and there was very little information coming out from parts of the world that were currently experiencing it, because when all of that started, Britain still hadn't had large numbers of cases. And the only cases that we could get information about were third-party countries along the way. There was Italy. There was a village in Italy where there were bodies lining the streets, and military had to come in with coffins.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether that was a different strain or a different variant than the one that I had is also a very real possibility. It could be that was even the strain that was causing all the deaths in the Chinese hospitals. It could have been that, or it could have been any number of other things. There wasn't enough information at the time. All the government was seeing was, there are people dying in large amounts due to a SARS-related respiratory illness that is stemmed from China. We've seen this before. And because we had the SARS. China came from China. Yeah.
But I'm still, even a year on, we're still in the same situation. With the hospitals closed. Which, you know, the most annoying thing about that is if they were using the hospital for COVID, that'd be fine. But they're not. The hospitals are just shut. And that's why, by the way, if you've watched the footage on Facebook or wherever of hospitals being empty, they are empty and they are under capacity. But the ICU units aren't. They're intensive care units.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are busy. And this is my entire point. It could have been arranged from the powers above a lot better. Instead of opening a pop-up hospital and then we might go out for it. As soon as that were open, they should have gone, right, if you come into hospital, you need a test. Right, bang, in there. You know what I mean? We could have protected the vulnerable people. We could have protected the hospitals better. And even if we had to run as hospitals half capacity, we would have still been a lot stronger position than having them bloody well closed and having everybody like... I'm fed up of seeing health information on TV now. Every other advertisement's health. I've gone from every advertisement being COVID to every advertisement about go and get this checked, go and get that checked. And they're panicking because of this backlog they've caused, and it's all because of poor organisation. And like you said at the beginning, you can forgive that. But 12 months on, as of today, you kind of go, we should have sorted something out by now. At one point, I checked, and there were, I think it were about 2/3, definitely at least 1/3 of NHS staff was off in that week. That was off the NHS website, about the NHS statistics website, and a vast majority of their staff was off with either isolating or had a positive test. And you should not be in that situation at all. And that, yet again, if 50% of NHS staff are coming into contact with COVID, that's because of inefficient planning and execution. We should be protecting as vulnerable and protecting as NHS staff. End of.
There should have definitely been more segmentation of different sectors. It's just common sense for pretty much anything related to health or security, especially in whether it's digital security, cyber security. You don't have everything in one place. You don't put all your eggs in one basket, as a layman's term, because if anything goes wrong, you lose everything. You don't have everything in one place. Like, you don't keep your insurance documents all with, you shouldn't keep your insurance documents with your proof of ownership. You shouldn't keep this with that. You shouldn't keep that with that. You should have everything segmented. You shouldn't keep your passwords saved on the same device that the passwords are for. For example, from a security standpoint, if you are having passwords for systems that you use on a device, so say your work laptop, you shouldn't have your passwords for every program on that work laptop saved on that work laptop. Have them saved on a phone. Have them saved somewhere else. Don't have them written in a notebook, or don't have a sticky note on the back of your bank card with your PIN on it. It's just keep things separate where it makes sense for them to be separate. You have fail safes. You have redundancies in place. If you know you're going to be treating an infectious illness, you don't put the people the next room down from a chemotherapy ward where people who are immunocompromised are going to have to be going, or now, as the case is, can't go because there is people with an infectious disease on the same ward or on the next ward over.
I mean, you'd never see it in a military exercise. You would never ever see the entire of the British Army in one convoy type thing. You know, don't get me wrong, I know that's an extreme example, but you wouldn't see it.
It's the same reason every soldier carries their own. It's called an IFAC, an individual first aid kit. It's not everything. That's why you've got a medic, but you don't have the medic carry all the first aid supplies, because if that medic takes a round and anybody else takes a round, you're all fucked. Every individual soldier has enough to keep themselves alive. They've got their own food, they've got their own ammunition, they've got their own water, they've got their own medical equipment. They have enough on them that if they can only look after themselves, they're not going to die. It's the same thing. You need segmentation. You need fail safes. You need room for error, because God Almighty, has there been error?
It's just obvious strategizing, isn't it?
Yeah.
The other question I was going to bring off onto before we've finished with this and moved on to a different topic, because we've now been over 2 hours.
Yeah. Gonna need a lot of editing.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to that. BBC news article: ban the BBC. Hashtag ban the BBC.
Defund the BBC.
Defund the BBC. Whoop. Anyway, Leicester plans to door-to-door vaccines to boost uptake. Vaccines could go door-to-door, offering jabs in a bid to tackle low uptake in parts of the city where infection rates remain high. What do you think about that?
Voluntary?
Yeah, it's voluntary. They're just going door-to-door to offer it. Well,
all for it. If
the article does say that it makes it sound like they're thinking about doing it. It's not set in stone that they're going to do it yet.
Leicester has been a hotspot. It has been a big hotspot, mainly because nobody's listened at any point through anything at all.
They've all had the music in, walking around with sunglasses on.
They've all had music. I shit you not. First lockdown, Leicester parties, every single house, mass gatherings. It was just non-stop. Nobody cared. Nobody listened. It's Leicester and a lot of the time it's just laziness. I think the biggest problem the human condition has is laziness. People are more likely to do something if it is given to them or if it is offered to them directly where they're there. If you have to take time out of your busy day being locked in the house to go and get your vaccine, you're less likely to do it than if the NHS rock up on your doorstep like, "Hi, do you want a vaccine?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll take one. Yeah, I'll take one. Go for it. Stick me." As long as it's voluntary, I've got no problem. The moment that it's enforced, I've got a problem. Now, not because I've got any problem with the vaccine. As I say, I'll get it when it's my turn. I'm young, I'm healthy-ish. I've already had COVID, so my body must have built up some sort of immunity because that's how viruses do. That's how the human body reacts to things. So I've got no problem with having the vaccine, but I'm not in any rush to go out and get it because I don't need it. Because
this were always obvious to me. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor or a virologist, but this were always a bit commonsensical to me from how I've always been taught about how the human defense system works biologically. But there were a news article the other month saying that if you've had it, you're just as immune as anyone that's had the vaccine. So to be fair, you don't really need it anyway. Although I'm not saying that you shouldn't have it. Right. So as last point, do you want to introduce us to that lovely woman that is all freedom caring, Katie Price?
God almighty, this woman. Right. Katie Price has, similar to Humza Yousaf, who got loads of mean tweets on the internet, and now Scottish people can get 7 years for possession of memes. It used to be 7 years. When the bill was first drafted, it was 7 years if you had memes, if you were in possession of memes with the intent to supply.
Stop and search. Have you got any memes that you would like to declare, sir?
Oh no, if you read the Scottish hate crime bill, it's a doozy. If you've got anything that is offensive, deemed as offensive on any of your digital devices or on paper in your home, you can go to jail. 7 years is the maximum sentence. For reference, in Scotland, the maximum sentence for child porn is 10.
That's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. So, spicy meme, 7 years if you get the maximum, and you will probably get the max. Someone is going to get the maximum because they want to make an example out of you. Whereas, child porn, they don't give paedophiles enough time in jail. They're always out too early. Good behavior because they're kept away from everyone else because otherwise they'd be stabbed with a potato peeler in the yard. But yeah, Katie Price has started a petition that was at 166,000 signatures at my last check. 166,000. Let's check where it's at now. 168,420. Nice. Signatures to make it a legal requirement when opening a new social media account to provide a verified form of ID where the account belongs to a person under the age of 18. Verify the account with the ID of a parent or guardian to prevent anonymized harmful activity, providing traceability if an offence occurs. So if an offence occurs as in a criminal offence, the police have the power to track that down anyway. And it is not hard to track down who somebody's real identity is on the internet, no matter how many steps they take.
Well, this is exactly what we were saying earlier about the Big Brother, if you like, having complete access to everybody, even the 99% of people that are innocent. And the problem with this is
bear in mind, Facebook didn't that long ago get sent to court for misusing people's private data.
Oh, exactly. So now
let's give them all our government ID.
So yeah, we're going to be taking pictures of that, and then that's going to be sold to the highest bidder, and then that data will get lost somewhere, or someone will hack into it
or leaked. Yeah. I mean, the amount of problems aside from the privacy side of things, which is my first concern, is one, no, making it a legal requirement that an anonymity is illegal. Like, yes, people can be mean to you on the internet. The place Katie Price gets most of her abuse is Twitter. Twitter has got amazing functions in it where you can tailor make your experience on the website to suit you. You can block certain words, you can block certain phrases, you can block people. There are block lists with people already on them, and you can just sign up to this thing and it will automatically block hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people like that. It's a button press to do that. So Katie Price has got a son called Harvey who has got some learning difficulties, and he's been the butt of a great many jokes from comedians such as Frankie Boyle, and I disagree with it. I think the jokes are in incredibly poor taste. I think that they're very, very, very offensive. I don't think it should be illegal because offense, freedom of speech should have social consequences. If you are going around making jokes about somebody who's got a severe disability, then you shouldn't be arrested. But if your employer doesn't want to have your name associated with their company, that is absolutely fine.
Well, this is where the education comes in. At that point, because people go, oh, well, if we aren't going to make it illegal, how do we stop it? We educate our children that
on
that's
how
not
to be
acceptable.
safe not even that.
No,
You can educate people on what is and isn't socially acceptable as much as you want. You are not going to stop people from being dicks. You educate people on how to behave online to protect themselves from coming into contact with things that they don't want to see. Like, for example, if I'm no longer on social media because it is cancer, but when I was on social media, I would permanently block anybody that I saw posting photos or videos of cruelty to animals, children, anything like that. And whether I'd been friends with that person for years and they were doing it because they found it disgusting, I don't want to see it. I know it's disgusting already. You're not convincing me. I'm already on board. I block it. I block them. I don't report them because, one, it's not against Facebook's terms of service anyway to do that unless the person doing it is clearly getting enjoyment out of the act. So you can stomp on a seal on Facebook Live. You can club a seal as many times as you want, not against their thing, unless you specifically make a point of saying how much fun you're having and how much gratification you're getting from it. That's how to behave online. If somebody's being an absolute dick to you on the internet, you block them.
Do you believe cyberbullying exists?
Yeah, cyberbullying exists, but it's easy to stop.
Yeah, I'm very split edge on this because my understanding of what bullying is somebody doing something to you repetitively, not leaving you alone, and the traditional
it's continued targeted,
backing you into a corner.
Continued targeted.
Yeah. So online, now there's a big difference. If there's someone like Katie Price, she is
a public
she
figure.
has always put herself in the public's eye, and
that is her job. She is a celebrity for the sake of celebrity. She
hasn't done that as being a singer or anything. She has literally thrusted herself onto people in a visual sense and audible sense and made people pay attention to her. So then you have to understand that is, and now there'll be a lot of people going, yeah, but you shouldn't have to put up with that. No. You should. Where does that line stop? Am I not allowed to say, oh, I dislike this song? Because that's what happens. The border continuously comes in until you're not even allowed to press a down thumb because it upsets that person. The point being as online is you can block people. If like there were a woman from Little Mix on about how she got depressed because of things people were saying her, fair enough, you have two options. Delete social media completely or get a social media manager. I'm not saying what these people are saying are all right and just put up with it. But what I'm saying is, if you're just going to say, right, you're not allowed to say that because you're not allowed to call us fat because
there are steps that you can
Nice.
take before you to mitigate things before you have to start making things illegal, before you start arresting people, before
But
you
the
start.
point of educating as kids that it's not okay is what I meant as how society works is if the vast majority of people think that's not okay, there will be a very finite point of how much that carries on, how many followers they get, because a lot of these people do it for the thrill and whatever else. And the way trolling works is if they do it for the reaction, that's the entire point of a troll. Ends the original meme of "you mad bro." The entire point is to get reaction. So you can do what James Blunt does and go for it and go, "Come on, then," or you can just ignore it and it'll stop. Now, there's certain people that get a meme made out of them and it goes massive. And in regards to Harvey, it's not him that's put himself in limelight; it's Katie Price.
Yeah.
But at the same point, is he seeing it? Is he actively seeing this and getting upset by it?
If he is, then that's a failure on the part of the parent, in my opinion. If my child was,
But at the same point, yet again, it's her that, in the name of money, has put him all over TV. He didn't choose to be a public figure. She made him one. She forcibly made him one by a shitty reality TV show that I know lots of people like. But the point is, she pulled him into the limelight.
Yep.
And then in a utopian world, nobody would be nasty about him. But unfortunately, for all you know, it's a 12-year-old child that shouldn't even be on Facebook that's typing this stuff. You don't know that.
It's that one kid that's screeching in the Call of Duty lobby.
Yeah. And you just kind of go, I'm sorry, but in the world of freedom of speech, and if so far you're not convinced and you still think that we should sanction Facebook and everything else and make us have an identity, which, by the way, government tried to do a long time ago by making you have to use your real name, which Facebook do now implement. I know people online that Facebook have messaged and going, "That's not your real name, change it or we're kicking you off."
And they have, as a private enterprise, which is within their rights to do, asked for photo identification or a form of identification to prove that your real name is the screen name that you are choosing to use.
I had to upload one of a week for advertising purposes.
Yeah. And private companies, fair game, you do what you want. But making it government mandated is where I draw the line. Because if Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or YouTube turned around on next Monday, and said, "Oh, by the way, in order to continue using our service, we need your photo ID." Like, okay, cool, I'm going to stop using your service. Easy, done.
Now,
However,
how this works on a government side of things, a government looks at your IP address, looks at everything else, pins it down, and finds out it's you. It's quite a strenuous. It's an expert thing that you need access to lots of different information for.
Or you could social engineer it and do it in half an hour.
By putting your ID on, you have to then. What you're doing then is giving Facebook that power to know who every single person is, know that it's definitely them, what the fetishes
who they are, where they
private messages are, the location, and every single little thing that us pathetic little people do with our phones, Facebook know about. Bearing in mind, they've even now invented a camera that follows you around, and that's the entire point of the product. And you're going, how much more are we going to give this company that has already proven countless times that they're not responsible with this information? And how much longer will that prominence stay for? And I think
until people will stop sacrificing their security for convenience, and to get that security back, they then start sacrificing their freedom. It's a circle.
It's all fun and games until a 15-year-old in Russia finally hacks Facebook and steals everyone's information, then makes fake ID for every single person in the UK.
Doesn't even have to be a hack. It doesn't. It can be a single disgruntled employee. One disgruntled system admin. Edward Snowden is the disgruntled sysadmin.
And actually, that nicely brings me on to the next thing, because I was just about to say, I'm surprised you haven't said it already. What about the whistleblower? What about the Edward Snowden, the Chelsea Manning? What about these people that go, actually, the military are killing innocent people? Actually, the government's spying on us. Now, these people went through Julian Assange, who yet again is in prison, but these people went through official sources. But making the Facebook stuff after have ID, these people now don't have the anonymity behind them to put evidence of things out on social media. And obviously, people like Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning had to go through official routes because it was such sensitive information. However, and it had to be filtered properly and stuff to protect national security
reasons, which
because
it
despite
was.
what the media and the government said, Edward Snowden did not put national security at risk. He held a lot of information back to protect the national security. Proof of that, how many terrorist attacks have we had since and before. But that is the top and bottom of it. And I once read something, and Edward Snowden videos and speeches are perfect for explaining it. But it's that unfiltered, anonymous conversation that does a lot. And you know, that troll that's been horrible online might be someone that if you cut that away from him, won't get out all that anger and frustration and go and kill someone instead. You know what I mean? You don't know what that is. And there's better
also
ways of going about it than just making sure everything's uniform and proper. I personally don't think anything online should have to correlate to reality. I think the online world should be allowed to be an anonymous, sanctioned place where nothing actually happens. We should crack down without censorship. Obviously, there's certain things that should be censored through democratic rule, like child pornography and stuff like that.
Direct cause for violence.
Yeah.
Which seem to be completely fine on Twitter if you are a protester.
The obvious things, but then the other things that are a bit, that could cause offence or whatever else, then it shouldn't be. And it's same as the Article 13 in the fascist state of EU of, well, we're going to put an upload filter on to make sure it's only for copyright reasons. Yeah, but until you change law a bit more, and then we can't whistleblow and we can't do this. And
yeah, it's only for copyright reasons right now, but once you have that infrastructure in place, what else is it going to be used for?
And it's on freedom. I have this argument about freedom of speech quite a lot, and I had it last year actually during the time we weren't in lockdown. And somebody said, I put about freedom of speech should be absolute, always and forever. And they said, well, no, actually, unless it causes offense or whatever. And I'm like, no. What do you not understand about the word freedom? You can't, that's a bit like saying a prisoner's free because he gets to walk around the court at dinner time. No. You're either free or you're not. Freedom does not have restrictions. And yes, it's very hypocritical because censorship and then a little bit of censorship. But that's different. It's the vast majority rule. You have to look at the safeguards. Censoring child porn is never going to turn bad on us. All we're doing is censoring child porn, making sure it doesn't toxinate people, making sure the people making it can't easily distribute it, so it's less appetizing for them to distribute.
It has a measurable victimhood as well.
But monitoring uploads, for example, that can have a massive impact. That can go very wrong. And there is a very big difference in that. And limiting freedom of speech, I always say, like I said about racism, you should be able to say any word, anywhere, every word, all them dark, nasty words that you've been told not to say. You should be allowed to say them. But then we should educate people not to. We should use social compliance to teach people, actually, well, I don't want to be friends with you because you use that word, and that's a derogatory word. You know what I mean? We should be able to move forward and educate people and move forward rather than the cancel nature that we just go, actually, that's not acceptable, so we're going to ban it and put you in prison if you say it. What the fuck? Well, that's not achieving anything.
No. The allegory that I use for this when I'm talking to people about it, including one of my drinking buddies pre-COVID, is I think that somebody should be legally allowed to goose step up the main high street wearing full Nazi regalia, and the police should And the police should just stand there and watch. And they should protect that person if anybody tries to physically assault them. If somebody walks up and starts shouting abuse at that person, completely fine. That person should be able to say, I think that this specific group of people are lesser, should be legal. Where the line should be drawn is, I believe we should do X about this. I believe that we should harm this group of people. And that's where I believe the line should be drawn when it comes to speech, is direct, actionable threats. And mainly because, would you rather see that person goose stepping up the street and know who that person is, and know that I want to keep my kids away from this person? I know that I don't want to employ this person in my small business. I know that if I'm working for a business and I see this person come in for interview, I want to know what they're actually doing. Or would you rather have that person just have those ideations hidden? And Jem Chowdhury, the Islamic extremist hate preacher that was constantly praising terrorism and having protests where they burnt poppies at troop parades and stuff on Remembrance Day. Absolutely, he should not be arrested for that. What he was arrested for was involvement with funding terror cells. But that is an actual victim-causing crime. Words and symbolic actions aren't harmful in and of themselves. And my favorite thing of where sunlight being the best disinfectant, having something out in the open so people can see it for what it truly is. Nick Griffin. Do you remember Nick Griffin?
Is it BNP?
Yep, that's the one. And how long after his question time appearance did that party last?
Oh yeah, exactly.
It killed it. Because what they appeared to be at the beginning was another UKIP, which is just a nationalistic political party. That's what they appeared to be to begin with. However, when he went on question time and he was questioned and he was asked to put forward his ideas, it became clear that he was just a racist scumbag and his party was nothing but racist scumbags. And the party died. Rightfully so. And not only that, the entire British public got to see the humiliation that happened when a racist bigot was called out for it on national television of all places. Fantastic. That is true. Like, actions have consequences. You have the freedom of speech, but you don't have the freedom from consequence. That's the consequence. Complete social ostracization.
Which, by the way, the person I had the freedom of speech debate with, it was actually about Katie Hopkins, and she'd put some on Twitter. And although I don't like her, I do appreciate her, if you know what I mean. I don't necessarily agree with what she says, but I appreciate her being a nail in the side. And the response that this pro censorship person said was, yes, but you may be free of have freedom of speech, but you don't have freedom of consequence. All right, so censorship is a consequence of freedom of speech, is it? That's just absolutely nonsensical bollocks.
Yeah, it's like the whole cancel culture debate. An employer seeing what one of their employees is doing online and going, I don't want my company to be associated with this behavior. You're gone. Fantastic. Fine. Absolutely. That's your prerogative, because this person's actions and words are affecting you. Your freedom to swing your fist ends at the tip of my nose. You can walk around and swing your fist as much as you want. The second that comes into contact with somebody else, that's when you're causing a problem. And so your freedom of speech has a social consequence. You can say as many horrific things as you want, and the government should not get involved unless you are actively calling for measurable harm to be caused. Measurable harm, physical violence, physical threats, things being withheld from people, which are already illegal. You can't discriminate in employment. You can't discriminate in offering public services. And you can't cause harm to people for any reason. So that's already covered. Why should we stop speaking about things? The ability to speak about harsh subjects is one of the only ways that some people grow. It's just it's gonna it will cause more harm in the long run.
It stops the education as well. For example, drugs. If you ban the word drugs off every social media platform, you can't then educate people on the negative side effects of them drugs. You can't educate people. You can't have influencers saying it's bad. You know what I mean? It works both ways. If you block something, you're not only blocking it from leaking, you're blocking it from going backwards as well. You stop that entire stuff around it. And like you say, Nazism, for example, that should be allowed to be spoke of. We should, end of the day, the ISIS shit, for example, they're recruiting people. Well, they were, probably still are. They recruit people online. So if you go, right, we're going to stop, we're going to ban it, you're not allowed to talk about it, they'll still talk about it in the direct messages.
They'll use
Only thing is
Telegram.
now, we won't tell people that it's bad because we won't be able to.
We won't be able to see it. We won't be able to find it. We won't be able to root it out. We won't be able to challenge it.
And by the way, in the regards to freedom of speech and speaking against what people think, just because people think something doesn't mean necessarily that we should limit. Fine, 90% of people think this, so we'll quite happily get rid of it, ban it. Well, no, because when Nigel Farage first started going against the EU, it went against. You know what I mean? You could say, yeah, but then Hitler, look what he did to Germany because he had a platform and stuff. Yeah, I know. And you have to learn from that and then go, right, we need to stop this. And by the way, this is what we're doing now. A lot of the conversation we've had has been about freedom. It's been about anti-fascism. And the entire point is you have to have that freedom of conversation about that. It might be offensive to a lot of people what we've said, although I can't see why because we haven't said anything harsh or direct. But under the censorship of things, like Katie Price, oh, they're saying something against me, so we should block it. Although we haven't necessarily said anything against her or Harvey, sorry. The entire point is you have to have that freedom from both sides to discuss the standpoint, and that's where the democracy comes from. If you can't compensate about things, you can't have a democracy about it. At the end of the day, if 90% of the people in this country thinks fascism's okay, then as a democracy, we go towards fascism. But you can't decide whether people are against the government or for the government if they can't compensate against it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And if an idea isn't in the open and if people don't have the visibility of, oh, this is on the rise, that this is starting to get bigger, you can't see it to stop it. And if you're not allowed to talk about certain subjects, you can't raise legitimate issues around those subjects. It's just one of those things. I mean, with your comments on social media and teaching people how to not be dickheads online, we do teach people that. People do teach kids that. It's taught in schools, it's taught by parents, it's taught in the workplace. It's taught over and over again. It doesn't stop it because people like being dicks. It's just the sad fact of the matter. And it's similar to a sign that I saw at the Sarah Everard vigil. And my response to the sign was, go for it. Please do it. And it was, teach your boys not to rape, or we'll teach our girls how to shoot. Yes, please.
Maybe should be
Self-defense.
We're both 100%. We're both 100% for female equality. And speaking of that, it's a very hard line to draw for equality because you kind of go, well, there is a difference between that, and we can stand here and say, well, men get domestically abused too, and blah blah blah. But the teach your boys not to, or teach your boys to, I think is a very redundant and easy thing to say. I think we've all grown up with the you do not hit women. every single child, I'm sure the vast majority, 99% of children, have heard you do not hate women. And like you said about the trolls, it will always happen, unfortunately.
Because there's always going to be a shit people around. It's an unfortunate side effect of the human condition.
We have to teach people to stand up for themselves. We have to teach people to have a bone and stand up for the people, because there is people that will see somebody, man or woman, being attacked and carry on walking and leave them be. Unfortunately, it's a very hard subject to find a way out of, and of course we do have to educate our children that it's not acceptable and stuff, but we already do and have done for a long time. Even back in the 80s, it still weren't all right to be a woman beater, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Even though the roles were very more defined then.
It was more common back then, but that was less to do with the fact that it was okay, more to do with the fact that the messaging to say that it was okay and the ease of which it was to be reported and get out into the public that, oh, you know, Frank down the pub beats his missus. Well, fuck Frank, we're not drinking with that cunt anymore. Whereas now you can share that information so readily, and it's fantastic because it is reducing harm. And it's one of those things. It's not something that is a case of boys aren't being taught not to rape girls, or people aren't being taught not to be dicks online, and people aren't being taught to be nice to each other. They are. Even like more and more every single generation, people are being taught to be nicer and be kinder. And it's great. It's fantastic. It's just the sad fact that people are shit and they're going to continue to be shit. And
it's teach the children not to be terrorists. Well, we do, but we can't help it if they get radicalized. You know what I mean? Obviously, we do his best and blah blah blah. And it's the same with serial killers. You know that everyone seems to think serial killers came from bad homes or whatnot, and more often than not, through my missus loving true crime videos, quite often than not, it turns out that a serial killer grew up in a nice home with a loving family and whatnot else, and we're just that way inclined. And you know, but I do think quite often that as humans we forget that we are mammals, and we think we're above that, but we're not.
We're flawed creatures.
Yeah, we've still got them primal instincts. I mean, yet again, I seriously not saying rape's okay. I'm not saying it's natural, but you do have to bear in mind that rape happens out in nature as well. Apparently, ducks do gang rape. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that's acceptable.
The difference is humans have got power of consequences. The human brain can judge consequences for actions. Animals can't.
Yeah, like I said,
apart from some very minor training, there's the only reason that stuff like that happens is power, and it's people wanting power, and those people are sociopaths. The only way to stop people being sociopaths is to find sociopaths and treat them.
Yeah, and that was my point. My point wasn't that it's natural, it happens, get over it. My point was that as humans, we are flawed. There's people that come out that have got problems, quite frankly.
There is never going to be a simple fix like teaching your boys not to rape or teaching your kids to be nice on the internet.
Well, it's same with everything.
It's an idealistic worldview.
Be it with everything, it is same with serial killers, murderers, rapists. Domestically abusive is a bit a different one because that's quite often down to recent pressure and things. That's not usually a lifelong thing. But even down to pedophiles, it's something within them. It's not something that they wake up one day and go, you know what, I'm going to be a murderer today. I'm going to be a pedo. Yeah, I mean, it's things that actually go on. So although it is something that we need to address as a nation, the population, I don't think it's something that's that simple as we'll teach people not to do it, because we do. And a lot of these people that do that sort of stuff know it's bad, but they either don't care because they want to do it or whatever else. I mean, like serial killers, you quite often get serial killers being quite smug and proud of what they've done.
Yeah.
Do you know it's wrong? Of course I know it's wrong. I'm not fucking stupid. I just enjoy doing it.
Yeah. And it's, again, the reason that people know it's wrong and how we know it's wrong is whenever it happens, there's never anyone coming out in support of it.
Yeah.
Ever. Not even like maybe a couple of people anonymously doing it as a troll, purposely trying to get a reaction. I honestly don't think there is a measurable amount of people that actually believe any of it's okay.
Yeah. And I think on that note, we shall end it because we were supposed to be doing about an hour, and it's been, I think the video's
Nearly
going to
3.
end up. Yeah, it's nearly been 3 hours. The video's going to end up being about 2 hours and a half. Maybe a little bit more. So there you go. I'd like to replay the disclaimers that we played at the beginning of the video. The views that we put into this video aren't necessarily his own, although the majority of them are his own.
Some of it is we are trying to play
playing-
devil's advocate for each
Yeah.
other as well, just to
Stole the words right out of my mouth.
encourage conversation, because
and I'm with the conversation. He's covered his camera up. Wonders what you were doing. The comments are and always will be open. However, racism, other forms of discrimination, other forms of hate, inciting violence, threats, anything will not be tolerated. You can have your views in the comments, and that is what we want. But, and I'm not going to say think of others' feelings, because we want to encourage that freedom of speech, but just be grown up and responsible about what you put and say. If we deem something not acceptable, if it's threatening, if it's, I don't know. I'm pretty sure you guys know what I mean.
If you're going out of your way to be a dick,
yeah,
we both believe very, very strongly in free speech. The freedom from not going to prison over a tweet. You don't have the freedom to not get your YouTube comment deleted because you're an unsufferable little dick.
yeah, if you want freedom of speech, go and put it on a social media platform, not on our videos. We're trying to create a nice, open, centralized conversation about politics where anyone's free. Because obviously, the entire point of threatening, yeah, it is freedom of speech, but in a very small community like that we're hoping to build, we don't want you to be intimidating others and not to comment and stuff. So if you want to go and say threaten us or threaten other people on social media, then that's down to that social media platform. But on our video, it's not really acceptable because we want to encourage the open, kindness, productive shit. We don't want the left-wing stuff of fuck you because you don't agree with what I say. We want a nice... Basically, we want to be able to have a right big argument about something and then shake hands at the end of it and have a pint together and move on.
Yeah,
So
my
feel free
favourite
to-
drinking buddy's a dirty socialist. It's great.
Oh, dear, you allow him to be your friend?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's allowed beer because it's almost bread.
Please do. This is a very new channel. This is the very first video. If you've watched it, please do share it on Facebook, that horrible website, Twitter, that horrible website, anywhere else you see fit. Send it to your friends, whatever. Let us know your thoughts about things down below. Thumbs up and subscribe. The more people that thumbs up, the more the video and the channel will grow faster. Subscribe and then make sure you don't miss any of those future videos. We're going to try and do... It's new, so we're not quite sure how it's going to work out, but there's going to be at least one a month, possibly every week. We don't know. And possibly some other videos. So make sure you hit that ring a bell button. And like you say, when we get a nice following, if we do build a following, we'll then start doing live videos as well. So then you can actually interact and have your input with what we're saying. So it is in your best interest for us to grow. So then we can have a proper, nice debate about topics. Wizard, I shall see you in the future.
Most definitely.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.